All right, so I will call this meeting to order. And just as we do that, I'd like to acknowledge that we are not the first people to live, work, and play on these lands that we're in right now. Please join me in thanking the Indigenous peoples for their stewardship of the traditional treaty lands that we now enjoy alongside them, and to acknowledge our Quaker history within the township of Uxbridge. So are there any disclosures of interest?
Look at me every time.
I think you don't have any. That's fantastic, Pam. Is there any others? Okay, great. Review of items not listed on the agenda?
There is an addendum, Worship, and it includes 2 reports, 5 bylaws, and a matter for in-camera.
Excellent. All right, so let's go with announcements. I think we're starting with Bruce today. Well,
Great.
last time you had nothing to say, I think.
I know, well, I ran out when everybody had all the other events. It's a great time of year, though, isn't it? There's so many things going on, so I'll let you guys talk about some of the stuff that was just happening last week. I'm just, 2 quick things then. The prayer breakfast is this Wednesday at Windance at bright and early, 7 o'clock, I think it is. I should know that. So today's the last day. If anybody is interested, tickets are still available through Brian Evans' office. And the only other thing I'll just bring up is the Vimy celebration at Uxbridge Secondary School is this Thursday evening at 6:30. So if you're interested in that, maybe I'll see you there. And that's all I've got, Dave.
Excellent. Todd?
Well, good. And nothing really new, just a reminder of the Precious Minds golf tournament that's coming up. If you aren't involved, if there's any way that you can be, either from a sponsorship side or otherwise, then that would be great.
Go ahead, Pam.
Okay, just doing my notes here. First of all, May 25th, Dimba's Demo Festival. And also on that same day, we're having the compost giveaway and swap out green and blue bins. And on the 26th, we have the walk for guide dogs. This is put on by the Lions. There'll be a walk here in town. There'll be also a walk in Goodwood, and it's usually very well attended. And the AGM for the Historical Society will be on May 29th, and we have a speaker, George Duncan. The topic will be Ontario's Vanishing Barn Heritage. Thank you. Dimba? Durham Mountain Biking Association.
Yeah, can I speak to that? I've been there a few times. So this is, the Durham Mountain Bike Association have, I think it's 1,200 members or something like that, so it's significant. And once a year they have a demo festival, so they bring in a whole bunch of different bike manufacturers. And if you're new to mountain biking and you want to get into it, or you want to upgrade your bike from, one level to another, you can ride bikes on the trails from a whole bunch of different manufacturers. And for us to kind of understand the sport, if you haven't mountain biked before, it's a good one to go to. They're a huge part of our trail user group, and you can even jump on one with pedal assist, so it has an electric boost to get you through the trail. So.
And some of us just watch.
Anyway, so that's what that is. That is, Pam, what's the date?
May 25th, yeah, the Saturday, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Willie.
Thanks, Mayor Dave. Just with regards to the culvert project, I just thought there was a little bit of confusion last week with regards to what's going on around it. And so there is a lot of work going on currently, prepping for dewatering, working at both the south end of the site and the north end. So with regards to things happening, there's definitely a lot of stuff happening on it. There will be continuous updates coming up from it. So I just wanted, just kind of squelch a little bit of what was mentioned last week, that there isn't much work going on. There's actually a great amount of work that's going on. It's just kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's when we get down to, more invasive and really opening up the earth to get to the problem area, that we're going to take care of it as quickly as possible. Yeah. And that's it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Gordon.
Thanks, Dave. A belated Happy Mother's Day to those in the audience. We had a great family day yesterday at our house, so lots of good food. My kids showed up and they actually all behaved, which was nice. So it's been a busy week. We had McHappy Day last Wednesday. I know a few of us were out cooking and doing odd chores for a good cause. That goes to Grandview kids, so hopefully they did really well on that one. 37. Okay, I wasn't sure on the final number, but we had the big bike team out in full force last week, so we worked up a sweat and again raised some money. So that a lot going on there. We had the firefighters dinner on Saturday night, an appreciation for present and past firefighters in town. Again, it was well attended by council, and thank you for those that came out to that. As has been mentioned, we have the Precious Minds Golf Tournament coming up. I will be participating in that. And last but not least, go Raptors. If anybody watched that game last night, we were all on the edge of our seats, and what a way to finish with Kawhi shot right at the buzzer. I mean, it was amazing. You couldn't ask for a better finale on that one, so thank you.
Go ahead, Gary.
Well, I think the other councillors have covered most of it. The Firefighters Appreciation Night on Saturday night was a really pleasant affair. There were about 80 people attending, and the food was great, and I met quite a few people I'd never met. So, thanks.
Well, I think most of the announcements have already happened, but let me just mention one little piece. So, Steve Curley has been a member of our community forever. And he was a firefighter in Uxbridge for 21 years. He's retired. But just I'd like to publicly thank him for all he has done for this community. He talked at the appreciation night about how, he didn't ever think of himself as a lion or an optimist or kind of a traditional volunteer, and this was his way of giving back to the community. And then just after we spoke, and he said, now as a retired Uxbridge volunteer part-time firefighter, as he's driving through the community, he remembers the calls, he remembers the accident scenes he's been to, he remembers the fires, but he thinks of it from a kind of a fairly pleasant lens, where these are the places that I and my friends helped out our community. So, and it was it was a great night. All right, so let's start with our delegations. Ross, who's the manager of Health Protection Division at the region, is going to talk to us about vector-borne disease response. Thank you very much, Ross.
Well, good morning, Council, and thanks very much for the opportunity to present today. Great hearing all the activities that are going on in Uxbridge, and a lot of them are outdoor activities, so I think this presentation probably ties in well with just giving you a little bit of background and information and an update on how things are going with regards to our vector-borne disease program. As was indicated, I'm one of the Health Protection Division managers, and one of my portfolios is vector-borne disease. So I've been with the region since 2000, and prior to that I was in the City of Toronto, so I'm in my 32nd year, I think, overall, 31st year. So I've been doing vector-borne for a number of years and that. So today's presentation, I'm going to cover our response plan. When it was in the beginning, it was called the West Nile Virus Response Plan, but over the last few years with the escalation, I guess, of other vector-borne diseases, including Lyme disease, we decided to change the name to vector-borne disease to encompass a number of these diseases that have come up. I'll give an outline of the vector-borne disease control program, our summary of our last year's season, and some of the priorities for 2019 under the vector-borne disease. So as indicated, the plan was renamed the vector-borne disease in order to include an emerging number of vector-borne diseases, including Lyme disease, Zika virus, and Eastern equine encephalitis. In the plan, there are 4 notification levels. We've been at notification level 4 for a number of years, and that happens as a result of identifying a West Nile virus confirmed human case. So back in 2001 was when we kind of hit the initial peak of West Nile virus activity. Then it tended to drop a little bit, but in the last couple of years, unfortunately, it has escalated again, and as well as indicated, Lyme disease is one that has also hit our radar pretty heavy. So the plan lays out the activities for the Health Department, our Regional Works Department, and the local municipalities in the areas of vector and human surveillance, vector control, complaint response, and a big part of our program is health promotion and communication. And moving forward, is the Vector-Borne Disease Response Plan will be incorporated into our Vector-Borne Disease Annual Report. So we've been producing a very detailed annual report for a number of years, and the last year we had a look at it and decided that instead of having kind of two separate documents, we thought it would work well to combine our annual report, which outlines the activities for over a number of years to show trends, and to incorporate the actual control program within the annual report itself. So last year's, the 2018 report, is just being finalized in order to be posted on our website. So it should go up fairly soon. So under the response plan, the 2018 response plan, municipalities shall, where possible, identify and map potential larvae mosquito development sites on municipal property and remediate where possible. So we know in a number of cases the locations may not be able to be remediated, and what I mean by that is if there's say a deep depression in a land, or maybe a building site where the buildings have not gone up yet, it may not be cost effective to remediate it. So for the short term, what we would do is, if it was identified as a larval breeding site, we would it could be remediated, or it was put to whatever use was the initial intent. To have representation on our response committee, so Uxbridge would have for this year, where we go over with the stakeholders our plans for 2019, what happened in 2018, and just to get that communication going again for the upcoming season. They administer and implement mosquito abatement activities in coordination with the Durham Region Health Department and other key external partners on municipal property, and assist the dissemination of educational and promotional material related to vector-borne diseases. So at our meeting, we actually handed out a number of our information pamphlets to the attendees from all the municipalities, and they would take them back and put them possibly in your reception area here, or just have them with them. They also assist the Durham Region Health Department, and this is a key part, with the investigation of stagnant water complaints on private property and the enforcement of legislation directed at the elimination of larval mosquito development sites. A lot of these complaints tend to involve derelict swimming pools in backyards that potentially will breed mosquitoes, but what we try and provide information on is we're actually in the West Nile virus control program and not the mosquito control program. So we actually have to identify that larvae are actually breeding within that pool that could potentially lead to the development of West Nile virus, or expose individuals in the proximity to West Nile virus. So again, an outline of our program for West Nile virus: there's vector surveillance, vector control measures, human case surveillance, and communication health promotion. Our two major vector-borne diseases are West Nile virus and Lyme disease. Under Lyme disease, you'll see there's vector surveillance, human case surveillance, and communication health promotion. There is not really vector control measures for Lyme disease, unlike West Nile virus, where we can have larviciding in that in order to control the breeding. There's no to address the issue of the ticks, the black-legged ticks developing. It's more, any vector control would involve probably cutting back of areas where the ticks could habitate on long grasses and things like that. So we really try and push the communications and health promotion to the public who are going in areas where potentially there could be black-legged ticks. Other vector-borne diseases in our 2019 priorities. Whoops. So just a little bit of a summary of our vector-borne disease control program in 2018. So we start with an adult mosquito program. So we trap mosquitoes once a week. It usually begins in late May, probably June, based upon the weather. And we trap once a week on Monday nights, and we have a total of 14 sites that we have set up. And these are called adult mosquito traps, where they generally hang from a tree, and there's a thermos, and in the thermos there's dry ice, that emits gases that mimic human breath, and there's a fan with a UV light that attracts the adult mosquito to the top of the trap. The fan draws the mosquito down, and it can't get out of there. So we trap usually we set the traps up about 4 or 5 o'clock on Monday night. Tuesday morning we go by, pick it up, and we send them into a private lab that does the enumeration. So they count them, they identify them, and then they test them for West Nile virus. So there's only certain species of mosquitoes that will carry the West Nile virus. so that it's not all mosquitoes that will transmit it. So our main reason for doing the trapping is to identify if there is the West Nile virus vector mosquito in the area. So these 14 sites are generally in locked areas, secluded areas where backyards of people's houses. So we really don't disclose the location of the traps for obviously privacy purposes. We do have some set up in locked gates of stormwater management ponds and that, so otherwise the traps would go missing. So in 2018 we had a total of, when we do every week, 196 traps altogether. Those numbers in brackets for the previous 2 years, so 174 the year before and 199 the year before. The total number of mosquitoes collected in 2018 was a little over 8,000, which was down from 2017, where we had over 13,000. Also down, we had over 9,000 for 2016. So one of the key things is the number of West Nile viral pools tested. So what they do when they test it is they put a pool of mosquitoes together, and then out of that they put it in their centrifuge and mix it up and identify whether or not there's West Nile virus in that pool. So we have 357 pools. So out of those 8,199 mosquitoes, it produced 357 pools. And out of those pools, a total of 7 of the pools were positive for West Nile virus. Now, some of these traps may go positive more than once during the season. Some traps may not go positive at all during the season. And it's really not dependent on how many mosquitoes are in the trap. It's whether or not they're carrying the West Nile virus. In Uxbridge, we had one site collected 2,008 mosquitoes, which I think was the most mosquitoes of any of the traps, with one positive pool collected the week of August 30th, 2018. That's probably not a surprise. Again, not all mosquitoes are vectors of West Nile virus. Approximately 20% captured in 2018 were primary vectors, and what that means is those are the species of mosquitoes that can transmit West Nile virus. Another component of our plan is larva mosquitoes, vector surveillance for larva mosquitoes. So these are the mosquitoes that have not yet grown to the point where they're up and flying around. So those are where you'll find them in stagnant water sites, so water that's not moving at all. So we do what's called a catch basin pre-treatment surveillance, and it's done by our contracted company. So they do weekly pre-treatment of 65 catch basins prior to them starting the catch basin larviciding program. So we met with our contractor last week and went over the time period from when we wanted to start the pre-treatment surveillance, and they started last week actually. So they'll do 65 catch basins, and there's a trigger point at where they'll identify a certain percentage of the catch basins that are harboring larva mosquitoes, and at that point is when they will start doing the larvicide treatment of the catch basins. Our standing water site surveillance, we hire 6 West Nile virus students who generally are in a science-based program at university, and they do they identify stormwater sites. Stagnant water sites are monitored every 7 to 10 days, so we have a schedule of sites that they visit pretty well every week, every summer. So in 2018, they routinely visited 415 sites with a total of over 4,000 site visits. So they do a lot of monitoring of these sites. And what happens with these sites is when they go out and they call it dipping, they have a pole with a little cup on the end of it. When they dip, if they have a certain number of larvae in the cup, it indicates that that site is active, and they pass that over to our pest control company who come out and do the larviciding. They'll continue to larvicide the site until there are no longer any larvae when they do their dipping, and once that's done, then they send that site report back to our students who then restart up assessing that site again. So as I said, one of our key components is vector control under catch with this program is knock down the number of larvae mosquitoes early on. So come late August, early into September, when the adult mosquitoes are really out, that there'll be less of the vector-borne species available. The Culex pipian is the most common species associated with West Nile virus, and they're called an urban mosquito. So they like to breed in catch basins. It's just conducive to what they like. So we know that from the research. So what we do is treat the catch basins. We do 3 rounds of treatment, usually in June, July, and August. And we do the entire region from one end to the other of all the regional catch basins. The residual, or the product that's used in the catch basin, has what's called a 21-day residual, which means it's effective for 21 days to knock down the breeding of the mosquitoes. The larvicide product is an Altosid pellet, a methoprene. So it only really affects that species of mosquito within the catch basin. It doesn't harm the outflow of any other species like frogs and things like that. And the total number of roadside catch basins treated in 2018 was 164,354. So there's, under the contract, there's a stipulation on how quickly they must finish the rounds of treatment. So they have a number of staff. This is the contracted company that looks after the larviciding. So they'll drive around in, I think, little scooters or whatever and drop little pellets into the catch basin. So we also do private backyard and regional catch basins. So if a resident has a catch basin in their backyard, actually our contractor is licensed to go in and treat that catch basin as well. Each time the catch basin is treated, there's a different paint mark on the grill of the grate to tell you which treatment it is. It's pink, yellow, green, I think, and the private backyard catch basins, I think, are red. So the total number of backyard and regional catch basins treated is 490. So what happens is the occupant of the home has to sign a waiver to allow the contractor to go in and treat the catch basin. So we've been doing this for a number of years, and each year the number tends to increase a little bit as more people become aware of it, and year in and year out we'll have the same applicants usually getting their catch basin treated. And then as far as our regional facilities, things like our long-term care homes, daycares, regional housing sites are also treated as well. The standing water sites, as I indicated, we either like site remediation, which obviously is a more permanent solution, or we larvicide the treatment of the site until there's no more larvae mosquitoes identified. So municipal would be things like your stormwater management ponds, ditches, land depressions, field pools, and your privately owned locations would be your commercial sites, construction sites, grading issues, swales, ponds, derelict swimming pools, ornamental ponds, and land depressions for residential. So municipal sites, again, includes our stormwater management ponds. The product we use is a BTI Vectobac based on risk assessment. So we don't just arbitrarily treat every stormwater management pond. Every year we get a list of the new stormwater management ponds from municipalities as new developments come up, but we don't necessarily treat them right away if there's no one living in the area. We wait until there's people around and that, and we wouldn't go out, say, and treat if there's no people living near there or at risk. Total number of sites requiring treatment were 208, with 50% of the sites required treatment in 2018. The total number of treatments was 1,044. So complaint investigation of privately owned sites. So again, this is something we work closely with our property standards officers from all the municipalities. It's related to derelict swimming pools for the most part, and usually the complaints come from a neighbor or whatever. So what happens is usually the bylaw officer will attend the site initially and try and achieve compliance. So within 48 hours, if they can't achieve any activity, they pass the report over to our senior inspector, who then goes out and addresses it. And under our legislation, we have more right of entry than the municipal bylaw officer. So we're able to access generally the backyard of the property and do what's called a dip to see if there is larvae breeding in the site. If there is, then immediately we'll have it treated for the time being until we can get it remediated by the owner. Either get the pool up and running, there is things the owner can do, put bleach in the pool, that type of thing, in order to maintain it so that it's not breeding mosquitoes. So in 2018, we had 26 complaints. We issued what were called HPPA orders under a health hazard. So those are orders that require the homeowner to do something, remediate the pool, get it up and running. There's other options to have their own contractor come in and treat, or there is things they can do themselves with it. Out of those 8 orders, if they fail to comply with the order, then our next step is proceeding with legal action. We laid 2 charges in 2018, we laid 4 in 2017, and 1 in 2016. We had 2 convictions. In Uxbridge, we had 2018 4 complaints investigated, and in 2017 we had 11 complaints investigated. So, as far as the convictions, of those convictions, I think 2 of them were against one homeowner, and this is unfortunately we get some of the homeowners that are repeat violators, I guess I could say, every year. They don't do anything with their private property pool, and then come the end of the year, just before we take them to court, they get it up and running, and then they go to the court, and the court decides based on that. Fortunately, last year, we had the same JP who had this individual in front of them previously, and I think the fine was $5,000, so it was a significant amount of money in that. But it is unfortunately a lot of resource, a lot of work to sometimes get no end result because they continue with it. As far as case surveillance, we had 5 confirmed cases of West Nile virus in 2018, 126 in Ontario, fortunately no cases in Uxbridge, 367 cases in Canada, and over 2,500 cases in the U.S. with 137 deaths. In 2017, we only had 3 confirmed cases. We had more human cases in Ontario, and 190 cases in Canada, and a little over 2,000 cases in the U.S. with 121 deaths. So we rely a lot on our health promotion activities. We do media interviews, send out news releases. We do local radio, newspaper, TV advertising. April 2018, we had our pesticide notice in the Uxbridge Times Journal and the Uxbridge Cosmos. And we do digital ads in medical offices, which we find very effective, where people are waiting to get seen by their doctor, that you see those little TVs or whatever, so we're able to do some information and messaging on West Nile virus. We also did it with Lyme disease as well, as they're sitting there, so we find it very cost-effective. We have magazine articles, website banners, billboards, community events, displays. Anytime there's a community event or display, we have staff that will go out and either set up a display or go provide a presentation. We also have a very effective weather network banner. A lot of people going outside look at the weather, so we have a really good little ad that runs across the bottom of the weather network. And we have washroom ads as well at restaurants, particularly golf courses, where people spend a lot of time outdoors. That's just a picture of pamphlets that we've created. They're just a small little brochure with that, so that was updated in 2017, so it's fairly current. Now just on to Lyme disease for a couple of minutes. So we unfortunately get a lot of reports of Lyme disease, people bringing ticks in to the office and that. It's a very nasty disease. The key to it is to identify it early, diagnose it early, and get them on treatment as soon as possible. Unfortunately, in some cases that's not possible, and the outcome could be quite significant. So we have what's called Lyme disease vector surveillance. There's 2 types. There's passive tick surveillance, and what that is that's ticks that are brought in by the public to the health department. And we only submit ticks that are taken off of humans as opposed to finding it on your animals. If you find it on your animals, we recommend that you take it to your vet, and they can look after it from that point. It would just overwhelm the lab in order to be testing ticks that are taken off of animals. So we've always restricted it to human. I want to say human ticks. So in 2018, we had 125 ticks submitted to our health department. In 2017, we had 176, and in 2016, we had 83. So the black-legged tick is the type of tick that can carry the Lyme disease. Back 100 of them are black-legged ticks, so that's a very, very high percentage. Our locally acquired black ticks, again, were 75. So we submit ticks regardless of where they're from. Generally, it's Durham region residents, but a lot of them will travel to their cottage or whatever and unfortunately find them on their body and bring them in. And the number of locally acquired black-legged ticks that were Lyme disease positive were 8. So similar to the mosquitoes, what happens is we take the tick, it's sent in for identification, and then if it is a black-legged tick, it'll go off to a lab in Winnipeg to be tested. So unfortunately, the downside of that is that it takes a long time to get the results. So our recommendation to anyone who's found a black-legged tick on their body, it has to be on the body for at least 24 hours for it to transmit the bacteria, but in many cases you may not know how long it's been on there, because they tend to go to areas on your body where it's not easily seen and that. So we recommend, if you have any concerns at all, to visit your doctor, and they can make a decision on treatment and that. So if they get treatment early enough, generally it's quite successful. And that's one of our key messages is to healthcare providers to do early diagnosis and treatment if necessary. So in 2018 we had 10 ticks submitted by Uxbridge and 21 in 2017. So active tick surveillance is when our staff go out and do what is called tick dragging. So what happens is they get dressed up in a white Tyvek suit and they walk along a trail pulling a little piece of cloth basically, and they pull it by areas where they think the ticks could be, and the ticks end up attaching onto the cloth, and they pick them off, and then we submit them for testing. So We do get some strange looks from the public when we're out there with these white suits on, walking along the trails. It does tend to alarm people in that, but it also makes them aware, and they also have, you know, generally have some pretty good questions, and they like to see that we're out there trying to identify if these are potentially risk areas for ticks. So we had 7 at 3 sites that we call them dragging. The 7 of them are black-legged ticks. Fortunately, none of them were positive for Lyme disease. And we do the surveillance in the spring and the fall. In the summer, it's not a good time to do it. The ticks are not as active when the hot weather is out. They tend to be less active more active early in the spring and then later in the fall. In 2016, we had a black-legged tick found in Durham Forest, Uxbridge, and also the Uxbridge Waterfront Trail. But fortunately, neither of them were positive for the Lyme disease. Case surveillance, we had 29 confirmed and 8 probable cases. In 2018, 1 case was in Uxbridge. We're still waiting, as I said. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to get the results on not only ticks, but also the human test results. So our 2018 results for Ontario and Canada are still pending. 2017, we had 40 confirmed cases and 8 probable. No cases in Uxbridge. As you can see, there was over 1,000 human cases in Ontario and over 2,000 human cases in Canada. So it is one of the fastest emerging infectious diseases. And that's our pamphlet for Lyme disease. It's similar to our West Nile virus. So we have all our information posted on our website. We have Lyme disease banner bugs, posters. We have these little tick kits, which we've put together, which are available at our office that the public can pick up. They're really just little tweezers with a little magnifying glass, a little bag, just a little small little brochure that explains how to remove a tick safely from your body, and that you can submit it to the health department for testing, identification and testing. We're also just in the process of finalizing some videos to go up on our website that our senior inspector will talk about personal protective measures, and we'll have different episodes. We'll have one on removing a tick and that we think are quite effective for the public. We also produce a weekly report on vector-borne diseases that we send out to our stakeholders. It's just a 2-page summary that just details what's going on as far as the activity in Durham region. We also have stats on Ontario and Canada as well. It's sent out electronically and will continue to distribution in 2019. And as I indicated, our annual report will be posted on the website very soon. So some other vector-borne diseases that we do follow up on. Fortunately, we don't get many cases. Malaria, and again, that's generally brought in from another country. Plague, which we've seen on the news recently that has unfortunately come up again. Tularemia, I think in my 20 years in Durham region, I think we've had 1 case of tularemia. Yellow fever, and the last one is one that people may be aware about, is Zika virus. Again, this is one that generally is brought in from another country. So our priorities for 2019, develop and implement a plan to provide increased awareness and education on Lyme disease and West Nile virus to school-aged children. We found that it was very effective for West Nile, and we think it'll be also effective for Lyme disease, that you teach the kids, and they tend to bring it home and remind their parents about some of the simple steps you can do to protect your family and your friends and your pets from West Nile virus and Lyme disease. We're just nearly finalizing the mapping of our black-legged tick surveillance results, which will go on our website, and that's so the public can go in and look at where we've identified ticks, not only the ones that are black-legged, that are positive for the bacteria, but also where we've found the ticks. Unfortunately, once the ticks find a spot, they don't tend to leave, so we believe they're here to stay. They're not, unfortunately, going anywhere. And as I said before, the control measures for it are very, very limited, so it really is important to get that awareness out there to the public. Develop and distribute an infographics poster on West Nile virus. So what that is it's a 5-year retrospective look on the activity and the trends of West Nile virus. We did 2 in 2018, 1 on Lyme disease and 1 on rabies that we distributed that were really, really good. They showed all the most common symptoms, the percentage of people that come down with it. For rabies, it would be the number of average bites over the 5 years. For Lyme disease, it would be the average number of ticks identified and that. So we're doing one for West Nile virus this season. It should have it out by, hopefully by midsummer. Any questions? Sure.
Thank you for your presentation. This is an area of concern for myself and a lot of my constituents. I'm getting a lot of different, questions in regards to the water areas that we have in our township. You've made mention, obviously, of private stuff, but my concern is more, to what we own as township.
Sure.
So to start off, the first question I have is, and I guess this will sort of go in order of your presentation, but, not wanting to become known as the mosquito capital of Canada, but as we are the trail capital, but, you have given us #1 ratings, so. Remediated, what does that look like?
Well, it really depends on the site. I guess if it's for example, a stormwater management pond, there is maintenance that can be done or should be done on a stormwater management pond, cutting back the growth areas around the edges, because that's where our staff will dip for the larvae. It won't, they don't go out to the middle. It's usually the edges where the water's most stagnant, and if it's a sheltered area where wind doesn't get at it, it's going to probably develop as a breeding site potentially for the mosquitoes. So there is a maintenance guideline for these stormwater management ponds and that, and that's how we work with the municipalities. We advise them of when we're seeing significant, I would say, larvae activity at the site, and I think they try and do what they can. I mean, it's a challenging thing to try and maintain these ponds, right? In a lot of cases, they're left, to grow, to allow the habitation of other types of amphibians and that type of thing. So we have some sites that historically have gone positive year in and year out, and some of them, they call them stormwater management ponds, but for lack of a better word, they're probably closer to being a swamp than that. So things like that. As long as there's wind and that sort of thing and movement on the water, you're not going to get the breeding of mosquitoes. Things like the decorative fountains that you see have very, very limited effect on it, because it doesn't get to the areas where the larvae would be breeding, which would be the edgings of the pond itself. Other sites, building sites, as I mentioned, I mean, we hope that they're just temporary, because there may be, a plan to put a commercial building or something on site and that, but again, we try and work with the municipality, or in some cases, if it's a private owner, to get them remediated through, leveling the land or whatever and that, so.
Okay. Larvicide site, larviciding a site, I'm guessing that's a pesticide of some type that's being sprayed, is that the idea?
Yeah, it's a pellet, usually granular type product. It's not a spray.
Oh, okay.
And that, so it's not introducing anything necessarily into the air or harming anyone. So the pellets, they'll just drop down the catch basin, and then the same with the stagnant water sites. They address the areas where the mosquitoes are breeding, which again is just off the shore a little bit.
Okay, so from a regional standpoint, do you know what areas within Uxbridge this is being done, or is that something done through the municipality itself?
So our contractor would look after it based upon the results, so I can get you that information. That's not a problem. Most likely, I think I'm almost sure, and I meant to bring it with me. I was still trying to get it from my senior inspector. There is a stormwater management pond in Uxbridge that has been treated historically, not for activity and that. And I believe there's also, my staff did mention something to me about a commercial development site that's been in the works for a number of years. Is that correct? So that's another site?
Yeah, there's work being done on that
And,
site
and that's
now,
what my
so-
senior inspector told me, that there is work going on there, but I'm just giving you another example of a site that has had instances where it's had to be larvicided.
Excellent, thanks.
Okay. You mentioned something about only one site in Uxbridge, on one of your slides there, catch basin wise, I think it was, that's been treated,
Catch basin or maybe a storm.
or storm.
Let me look, yeah. Because all the catch basins are on regional roads, so they're done 3 times a year, June, July, and August.
Okay, I'm just-
My guess is it's probably, could be a stormwater management pond.
Right. I'm just wondering why it would only be one site in Uxbridge as opposed to everything that exists in Uxbridge as far as the main stormwater management ponds.
That's one that's been treated. It doesn't mean that there hasn't been other ones assessed.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, all the stormwater management ponds that we're aware of, and again, we do rely on the municipalities to provide us with that I would their list of stormwater management ponds, just to make sure we have the most accurate, and everything's mapped, GPS mapped, so year in and year out, we have same sites, and then we'd have potentially new sites, but again, some of them may have to undergo what we call a risk assessment, where they send us actually a photograph of the new pond, so to speak, the new stormwater management pond, and we look at, is it in proximity to houses and things like that. It may not be early on, but as the next year we may treat it, or we may start assessing it, just to see if there is any growth at all.
Okay. Now, just last question.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I know.
Sure, no problem.
I'm going to be one that asks questions on this one.
Yeah.
You did just make mention in one of your answers there that the fountains, or whatever you want to call them, are not necessarily helpful. We did have some in a number of places within our township.
Mm-hmm.
All have been eliminated except for one. And I'll be honest, there's been a definite increase in the number of mosquitoes since they've been removed. So my question is there I'm not sure how, if there's actually science behind what you're saying.
Yeah, there is.
Is there science behind what you're saying?
Yeah, and I can provide you with that, yeah. There's a lot of research. A lot of it was done, I would say, early on. Back in 2001, 2002, there was a significant study put forward to assess stormwater management ponds, including the effectiveness of these fountains, I guess, at the ponds, and the end result was indicated that it had very little effect on the control of mosquito larvae for West Nile virus breeding in the stormwater management ponds.
Okay.
Because the area is so broad, like generally the ponds, I mean, sure, in your backyard, if you had a small little ornamental pond and you maintained it and the water was moving, then you wouldn't have the breeding of the mosquitoes. The key is the movement of the water.
Yeah, it's just been a noticeable
Sure.
increase.
Yep.
Like a noticeable one to where you can't eat outside.
Yeah.
In Uxbridge, in my area of Uxbridge, which is by Quaker Common, which has a massive pond.
Besides the ponds, there is other significant breeding sites for mosquitoes. They like to hang out in cedar hedges. I'll be quite honest, a lot of times it's people's own backyards or close to their backyards where there is some stagnant water. And again, it doesn't take much. And if the weather's warm enough, it only takes 3 or 4 days for them to breed and that. So the biggest risk is, when I first started the program, I always thought that, oh geez, if we got a lot of rain, it's going to really have a lot of mosquitoes. It's actually the opposite, that if we don't get very much rain and it gets really hot, then there's less activity with the water, less movement of the water, and the water that's around, there's probably less of it, so it's going to heat up much quicker, and the mosquitoes are going to breed much quicker in it. So we say drain after rain. That's one of our big things, but the reality is you should drain water all the time. So my son told me it's going to be a very hot summer. I don't know where he gets that from, but so maybe he's wrong, but so we've gotten this rain now, and if we do get a dry, hot summer, then we will most likely have a significant amount of activity of mosquitoes overall, but whether they're West Nile virus mosquitoes, we don't know.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? No, we're already about 10 minutes over, so
Okay.
let's try and...
This is very short.
Great.
Is there any particular color that ticks are attracted to?
Sorry?
Is there any particular
we
color?
recommend you wear light clothing, light-colored clothing, so dark clothing. Part of the reason for that is you're able to see the ticks on you. So what we've done is we've posted awareness signs. They'll be at Durham Forest, large metal signs with the fact that black-legged ticks have been identified in this area, and the steps that people can take when they're there. There's like 3 or 4 different points about putting socks over your pants. The most important thing actually is to check for ticks once you've come in from outside, and one of the other best things to do is actually just have a shower, because usually as soon as you come in, they haven't had time to really latch on. It takes that 24 hours, so if you have a shower, most likely you're going to wash off whatever things may be on you. So that's part of our video, is to kind of teach people how to get prepared when they're going to go for a walk.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council? Ross, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
As Todd mentioned, it's important to our residents.
Mhm,
we hear
definitely.
about it
Yeah.
constantly, and
Yeah.
for those families that are outside a lot, which we
Yeah.
try and encourage,
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
it's a big risk. And my sister-in-law had Lyme,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, she caught it in
not-
New York, and it
yeah.
was pretty nasty, so.
Yeah, it's not something you'd wanna have.
Yeah.
So at any time, any of the residents, you know, wanna just call the health department, if there's a site that they're concerned about at all, or the municipality, we can certainly go out, our staff can assess it. We have students out every single day, and they're in Uxbridge area pretty well every day, so it's not hard for them to just swing over and assess a site and give a report back to anyone here.
Amazing. And, before you leave the building,
Mhm.
I've asked, our communications person, Colleen,
Yep.
to grab you and take a video, kind of a minute or two that we can
Sure.
put on social media.
Yep. Oh, and the other thing is I've got it out in the car. I've brought some of the little, that I can leave at the front counter, and you guys can have a look at them. So they're actually simple. People could actually make their own if they wanted to. So I'll drop them off. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much, Russ. Jake, do you want to come up from PFLAG? Do you have a PowerPoint, Jake, or no? No, I went live today. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Yep,
Oh,
you're
perfect.
good to go.
I can probably talk loud enough. Thank you very much for allowing me to come today on behalf of PFLAG Canada. I'm here today to speak about a way that Uxbridge can send a message to be inclusive to the LGBT community here. I'm here to ask that Uxbridge stand up and acknowledge and show support for folks who are often marginalized, discriminated against, and mistreated daily, and not only in public spaces, but oftentimes within their own private spaces. I'm a representative of PFLAG Canada Durham. We support all persons who reach out to us to help support their journeys through gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. Our organization is 100% volunteer-based. We have 120 active volunteers that help support 10 ongoing monthly programs, and over 100 education courses are taught each year. We directly impact over 250 community members and allies monthly, with well over 3,000 folks supported annually. We run a camp in August for children or youth 13 to 17, which is free, for they can come and be who they are. As well, we partner with over 10 local organizations throughout Durham. PFLAG Durham Region is the largest and most active PFLAG chapter in Canada and in Durham, and it's the education and resources for the LGBT community, as well as businesses. We go out and we do education. I've actually done them for the City of Pickering and Pickering Library, and we do that sort of work. So research approximately says that 10% of the population identifies in the LGBT community. In my space as an advocate, I'm often asked, why is there a need for a pride crosswalk? Or, if we make such a special crosswalk for the LGBT community, then will we have to do it for other communities? This might offend others. And of course, this will cost money. To these I answer in the following way. A pride crosswalk can be a lifesaver. And maybe for you, you don't understand that, but it can be a lifesaver, especially for the youth. It can be a symbol of belonging when that is not commonly found. We grow up expecting our homes to be safe and where the heart is. This is where we are told by society that we are to learn about love and acceptance. However, for many who identify in the community, home can often be dangerous, unloving, and unaccepting. And it is this very society that tells us that home is where the love is also the society that tells us that being who we are is wrong, gross, disgusting, evil, and we are held as second-class citizens who are less than those who do not identify in the community. We are teased, mocked, beaten, spit on, called names, and told that our existence in this world is not needed. It has been researched that close to 40% of the homeless youth are those who identify in the LGBT community. This is largely due to family rejection. Suicide attempt rates in the LGBT community run 4 times higher than that of the general public, 33% to 7%. Trans-identified folks even have a higher rate of 47%. Being part of and involved in the Durham community, I can confirm that we do lose folks every year to suicide because of family and society rejection, because they do not feel like they belong and are told they do not belong. It is real, and it is in our backyards. So how is the LGBT community different than other marginalized communities who have differing cultural, race, or ethnicity to the general majority? Perhaps I can just paint a little picture for you. When a youth comes home from a school, or maybe the mall, and they've had a bad experience of racism or xenophobia, they come home to a family who most likely resembles them and can empathize with them. build them up to be proud of who they are, where they come from, support them, and they offer them tools in the best way to deal with this. When the youth from the LGBT community come home after a homophobic or transphobic incident, they are very often not encountering the same support. No one may resemble them in their home or can empathize with them. They may not even be openly and authentically themselves within their own home and are being bullied and mistreated by their family because they know of their identity. This is the main difference. The idea that the Pride crosswalk might offend others is generally based around religious or faith. I'm always perplexed by this because how could a painted rainbow offend someone? There are churches, mosques, temples, and synagogues that stand as symbols of one's faith in Uxbridge and around Durham. For folks, these symbols of inclusion and oneness for who they are give them positive affirmation of how they feel and what they believe in. Many religions and faiths and cultures do not recognize folks who openly identify as a person in the LGBT community and will not allow them to be part of their church, and they are shunned by their families, which makes it even more difficult to hold on to their faith and culture, again alienating folks from their families and friends. But I want to reframe that in a negative narrative into a positive one. The LGBT community has no barriers. There are folks from every race, religion, culture, faith, and ability who identify themselves in the LGBT community. There are no exclusions. Religions and faiths have permanent places of inclusion. Having a Pride crosswalk would give some space within the Uxbridge community to let LGBTQ folks know that they are seen and respected as part of the intersectional fabric that makes up Uxbridge. A Pride crosswalk will offer the symbolization to the community of inclusion, oneness, belongingness within Uxbridge, and the affirmation that they do exist and are valued. The statements around the idea that what if we support this community by the way of a Pride crosswalk, then we would have to help support others. I ask you, why is that a negative idea? Many Canadian cities are painting crosswalks to honor First Nations peoples, which I wanted to say thank you very much for honoring them today. The arts, local wildlife, and local cultures. This is not a new idea to show support. Uxbridge can do the needed work to represent their residents. What would Uxbridge look like if other communities came forward and asked to have permanent installments to show inclusion? Would this not be a positive way to intertwine Uxbridge residents? Showing support for a particular community is not taking away from anyone else. It is adding to the positive dynamics in Uxbridge. It is the way that you can lead in equity and inclusion and not work to play catch-up. I do want to acknowledge that the municipality of Clarington has now joined many other Canadian cities to show support by launching their Pride Crosswalk on June 13th of this year. For the LGBT community, this says, we see you, we acknowledge you, and you are important to our community dynamics. I recognize that there is a physical cost to this ask, to which I would like to address as a community beautification project. I'm asking you to make it part of the ongoing Uxbridge budget. The LGBT community does not receive funding or spaces. We have no tithing process that sustains a place for us to meet. We have no village and no ongoing meeting places. We're asking Uxbridge to look at the different than budgeting for such things as flower plantings, holiday lighting, or other things that grace the landscapes throughout the year. I ask you to put forward in your budgetary spending to approve a Pride crosswalk to be installed and maintained as part of the Uxbridge commitment to inclusion, and to show the LGBT community that they are valued, they are seen, they are part of this diverse makeup of Uxbridge. With deep conviction, I'm asking that Uxbridge stand up with the PFLAGs of Canada and Durham and lead an initiative which may help drive all the cities within the region to show their support for those folks who identify in the LGBT community here in Durham and in Uxbridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. Are there any questions from council? Go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, do you have a sample of what these things look like? I mean, I'm trying to vision in my head, but I'm trying to see what they actually look like.
Yeah, I can definitely send that up
Can you
for
send
you.
that
Yeah,
out
like
to us?
I don't know if you've ever been to Toronto or not, like down into the village area, but
Yeah.
they actually come in various forms. A lot of times they're very I guess vertical across the roads, but they can be even, they don't have to be like even right on your main road, but it would be wonderful it was there. But they can come in like different, you know,
areas.
cross-hatchings. They can be quite a different ways.
Does it have
Oh.
to meet certain, sorry,
There.
oh, okay.
And they are legal. There was a bit of a questioning around that, but they are legal.
So it meets the
Yep,
highway
it meets-
traffic act
yeah.
or whatever, okay.
Absolutely.
Maybe if you could forward what Clarington has done to us, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
But I can certainly support the concept. Finding the location, I guess, would be part of it as well, so.
And
So
Ingrid and I would,
maybe it's something
yeah.
that we can forward to our own Public Works Department and then.
Yeah,
let
I
them
know
what-
Whitby has also showed positive signs as well as Ajax, and I just spoke to the
Okay.
region and they're putting one forward. So, you know, the movement is to try to make Durham kind of that place where we're gonna stand out rather than catch up.
So if you could link that through to us.
I can.
We'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
so, and Gord, Jake was at the region on last Wednesday, talking to Regional Works, so if we want a prominent location for this, it would have to be one of our regional roads, so. If there's no more questions, if we could get kind of a motion to have staff come up with, by working with the region, some suggestions here?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just to your point, Dave, being on a regional road, would the region pay for this?
That would be my hope.
It'd be great if they could.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it costs to do a crosswalk.
I know that Clarington, I think it was around $8,000 to initiate it, and then there'd be maintenance. I don't know how often you do painting maintenance, but it was around $8,000 for the width of, you know, obviously it depends on the width of your road, right? So theirs is actually particularly large, and so it was around $8,000 they came up with, within their works.
Yeah, they have significantly more money than we have. But thanks.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I totally do, and that's what I'm saying, is that I recognize it does cost money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it can be smaller. I mean, there's also things you can do even within Uxbridge. It doesn't have to be maybe a crosswalk that's on a road. Maybe you find something in a space even at, like, City Hall, that you could find a space that you could do something that's a permanent installment. That's maybe smaller, but it's still there.
Makes sense. Any other questions? No? Okay. So let's go with your motion then, Gord. Do you want to
We
repeat
need a
it?
seconder, I think.
Yeah, do you want to
Councillor.
repeat it, just so we make sure?
That this be referred back to staff for obviously budget considerations as well as locations, and we'll have to obviously go through the region if we're gonna go to a regional road, so,
Okay.
okay?
Would someone like to second that? Seconded by Willie. All in favor? Okay, so that was passed. Thanks. Thank you so much, Jake. Oh, yeah, and, let's deal with it now. So while Jake's here, correspondence number 201.
Move
Can
that
we
forward.
move that forward? Move that forward and receive. Moved by Willie, seconded by Gord. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. All right, next we have, just a moment. We've got, Bill from Dagmar talking about the fill operation. Thanks, Bill.
Hello?
Yeah, you're good. You may have to move it up. That's never been my problem.
Just that one? Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to update everybody on the progress of our development at Dagmar. Originally, this is what you're looking at here is the unload area of two of our lifts and our lovely competitors in the background there. One problem we've had always is these two red zones are very, very steep drop-offs on each side of the unload area. If you look at the other ski resorts, they all flow away nicely from their lifts in all directions, giving a lot better skiable terrain. Our main goal is to improve the safety, obviously to gain skiable terrain, and to thrive in this excellent township of Uxbridge. A little bit of history in Uxbridge. People have been coming to Uxbridge to ski for over 100 years. They've been called the whole area of Lakeridge, Dagmar, and Skyloft, basically the Dagmar area, because people would come up on the Dagmar train station at the bottom of the hill. And in this article, it was actually between 300 and 500 people they'd unhook 4 cars at the train station. They'd get out and walk up to Dagmar and walk up to Skyloft and walk up to Lakeridge and ski down and spend the day. Businesses started on Chalk Lake. They had a big big barn that turned into a eating area that the wife of the farmer would feed everybody. In the 60s, Dagmar became an actual business that it is still today. Today we have over 75,000 skier visits per year. We have 10 full-time and over 250 part-time employees in the winter. Tomorrow we're looking at taller, wider, safer Dagmar for the future. One big thing that is on any municipality is the importation of fill. Working with staff and the consultants, we've come up with one of the strictest guidelines for importing fill. The rejection rate is very, very high for our site, which we don't have a problem with. It did slow down. We have had to increase completion dates. But like most of these sites they could be completely clean, but without the history of the property, you don't know what testing needs to be done. If it was a farm field, you'd need to test for pesticides and some of the harsh chemicals you don't have to worry about. If it was an industrial site, you need extensive testing, but a lot of places lack the history and lack the initiative to go and get the information that you need. It's all there, they just have to pay for it. And most sites just try and find the cheapest way out and go and dump wherever. All the soil so far at Dagmar has met all the required criteria to our agreement, and as peer reviewed by the township's consultant. Progress to date, our plan is for the import of 240,000 cubic meters. The two red zones are the safety items. The green zones are where we've deposited soil so far. In our development plan, there was phasing put in. I think the township wanted to work into a spot where if things were going awry after phase one, they could shut us down. To date, we're now very, very close to the phase one completion from 88,000 cubic meters. The phase one on the site plan was 89,250, so we're right there. Phase two and phase three are now on track to meet the amended completion dates because we have found the best source of fill ever. Crosslinks Transit Solution is the constructors for the new Eglinton Crosstown. The Kennedy Station is going to be a massive underground transit hub, like very, very deep, completely native soil. The Stouffville train line is going to meet there. Obviously, the Eglinton Crosstown is going to meet there, and there's a subway extension, just big hub. Like their motto, soil management, is excelling with excess. They're leading the way with techniques. They have advanced 3D modeling. The amount of testing they did and the budget they had for testing is unmatched. Every 150 cubic meters has been tested and graphed so that the people on site doing the work know exactly what they're going to be moving that day. They have a complete full environmental team that they work with, and the QP is a qualified person on site that signs off on the documents. That's a professional in the field. We actually had to get approval. We had to be approved by their people to be able to take their dirt. They needed somebody with a proper site plan management plan, with an agreement with the township that the spill is going to their township, agreeable to a plan and our site plan development agreement. So in summary, the quantity for phase one has been achieved. We're now on track to meet the completion dates for the remaining of the job, and we respectfully request authorization to proceed beyond phase one, as per section F of the plan, which requires to go any further. Item 204 in correspondence is, since this PowerPoint was made, it has been answered by the township consultant, Brian King, from Oak Ridge Environmental. He stated on Wednesday, "We have reviewed the letter and concur with your findings. We are confident that all the excess soil brought to the site has met the required quality criteria and that all the proper procedures have been followed." And we're looking forward to finishing this project in your town and thriving here and employing more people and getting more skiers up here to enjoy what Uxbridge has to offer.
Sounds great. First of all, congrats on a great winter for your
It was
business.
a good one.
we spent some time at Dagmar this winter, and it was great to see how busy it was, so
Excellent.
good to hear. Pam, this is your ward. Do you have any questions?
Yes, you're gonna be still drawing fill in, on the Pickering-Uxbridge town line?
Yes.
Okay. As you know, there has been some concerns from some of the neighbors about how the road is left, et cetera, the dust. Now, when you talked about completion time of phase 2 and 3, when exactly is that again?
The completion times for phase 2 and 3 have been, phase 1 is December 31st, 2019, phase 2 is December 31st, 2020, and phase 3 is December 31st, 2021. But it looks like we can finish it this year. There is a stockpile that we brought in the winter. What we're doing is phase 1 and phase 2 are the sides of the lifts. Phase 3 has to be done in a complete separate stage. We have to remove 2 of the chairlifts, put the fill on top of that area, and then do the lifts in that summer. So we're hoping that'll be done next summer, which will have no traffic on that road as far as truck traffic.
Okay.
As far as the road is concerned, and the complaint about the court road, Sean Battersby is Senior Coordinator of Development Services. He reviewed the road on Friday. I have attached photos of the road taken today, noting the condition of the road to be in very good condition. And he goes on to say, the road was generally in a very good state. So any comments from that neighbor that we have had ongoing...
Issues?
Pardon me?
Issues.
She's complaining that we're killing the trees from the exhaust smoke to the farm next door. Like, trucks go by farms every day in far higher quantities than our place and do not kill trees. The letter from her, I don't even want to get into her complaint too much because her latest reply is, I have no idea how to answer it. She's getting a little bit, talking about lovey-dovey colors of red, because I redlined some of her things and some of the answers over here. I redlined logical items to her complaints, and her answer, put in red points. Her answer is, good afternoon to you as well, Bill. Great choice. Red is powerful for it's infused with love.
Yeah.
So,
I'm having a hard time relating to answering somebody with those kind of complaints. She's digging at anything she can, which is unsubstantiated by anybody in the field. She outright says the road is not conducive to traffic. Meanwhile, we have a road occupancy permit which allows such use with the city of Pickering.
So what I'm wondering about, we should table the letter from Bill today. This is just my take on this. Table it. We'll have a couple discussions with people like High Hope and with a couple of the neighbors. Make sure that we're all comfortable with moving forward, and then on our next council agenda, we'll make the approval.
I would agree with that.
I think
Just,
give us a little bit more time. I drove by on Friday as well,
Yeah.
and it looks really good from my side. I mountain biked with the owner of High Hope and forgot to ask him about it, and he didn't bring it up.
Yeah.
So I think we're good. I just want to make sure that before we move forward, Phil is it's a fairly dirty word here in Uxbridge, so we would just want to make sure that we're being really careful as we move forward with this bill, and I'm sure you understand. And then in a week, we can get this approval done.
yeah, the roads before half-load season hit were a little interesting, because I drove down there, and now it's fine now.
There was maybe 4 potholes in one
Yeah.
area that was low. But, yeah, we just want to make sure we're doing all the right things as this council, and make sure that we have full support going forward. Just a couple questions that I had, if you don't mind, Bill. So, on your equipment, your loaders and things like that, are you using the traditional backup beepers, or are you using the white noise ones?
The new equipment is white noise.
White noise, okay.
Yes.
So your loaders are the things that are moving dirt and most active, they're white noise?
Most active, yes. We have an old Packer that we do use occasionally that hasn't been converted. They're like $700 each.
Okay.
We have quite a few pieces of equipment, but they're not used very often. The main bulldozer that's pushing is definitely the new
style.
The new style, yes.
Okay, good. Whenever I look at these things, I try and think of how do we become the least invasive, as possible, and that, those things make a big difference.
Yeah, the tailgate banging has been an issue, and now we're finding, and one of my replies to her was, I believe there's a language barrier. We have our gate guy telling every driver not to bang their tailgate, and some of them look at him, they just don't understand, they just don't. So we're having signs made in Punjabi, Arabic, what the drivers are mostly driving nowadays, the languages they speak. And hopefully that will reduce it. We reduced the speed of Pickering from 30 down to 10 kilometers an hour now. That has helped incredibly.
Yep.
The issue with the garbage on the side, Sean went down there, we clean up the garbage, but we are making no stopping signs for along the road, so because they do, the drivers before getting back on their trip on the way home, it's a nice country road, they stop on the side for a little rest and have their snacks, and some of them are not the cleanest. We clean up often, we do road inspections every day, and we are getting no stopping signs made for the road.
Yeah.
They're not going to be legal signs, there's not going to be a bylaw written about them, but hopefully it will deter them from stopping there. Same as the orange speed signs, the speed limit's 50.
Yeah.
We can put whatever sign we want, it's not legal for them to follow it, but it definitely helped a lot.
It did. Again, it looked good from my side. So we'll just cross some Ts on our end, and then we'll get this done, as long as council supports that direction. Can I get a motion? Oh, Gord, question?
Just a question through you to staff. Deb, does this require any tweaks or amendments to the existing agreement, or is it just an FYI?
Not that I'm aware of, but Brian may be able to speak to this. He deals with it
Okay.
more frequently than me.
I'm sure staff will probably be bringing that forward at some point, so.
Yes, we would just have to amend the dates on in the schedule.
Does that need to come back here, or is it done internally?
Correct me if I'm wrong, in the past, often we've just redlined them and initial the dates if council approves those dates.
All right, okay.
Just,
So we don't
just
need
a
that.
year, yeah, we've done
Just
that
an
before.
amendment. Okay, thanks, Brian.
The dates have already been changed on the thing. It was just going past this point, whether we've done everything in our power.
I
is the
just
only
didn't
thing
want
I
to
can-
hold it up any longer than necessary, so.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions from council? No? Okay, so, Pam, do you want to make a motion that we table this report, and bring it up on our next, can we, table it to committee? Okay. Okay, so, yeah, let's go council on the 27th. Sure.
Who's meeting with High Hope and whoever else?
I
Is
think
that
we'll
gonna
just,
be
I
the
just think we'll
ward
just send an
councillor?
email and find out. Pam, can you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just make sure if there's any tweaks we need to make, we can.
Okay.
All right? And you're in charge of that? And so you moved it? Can I get a
Yes.
seconder? Willie seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks a lot, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, next we've got Jennifer coming from the Defeat Depression Group. Oh, wait, is Tom next? Oh, sorry about that. Tom Hurst is first. Do you have a presentation, Tom, or no?
I was just speaking on my own.
Okay, no problem.
I've received bills in the mail for emergency vehicles at an accident my car was involved in.
Yeah.
And I was not involved in the accident. My car was taken without consent. Up the road, hit a hydro pole, rolled into the ditch, rode off. The person who took the car, I got woken by a neighbor who came down and got me and said, "You own a black car." Took me up the road to the accident scene. All emergency vehicles were there. Car was rode off. The girl was taken away, impaired. And I've been receiving bills in the mail for the emergency vehicles, and I don't think I should be responsible for that.
Okay. Sure. Go ahead, Todd.
You used the words taken without consent as opposed to stolen. That means two different things.
Well, the police said that to me because this person has driven the car in the past, which I never knew. She never had a license at all. She drove it one time in the past from, who lived on, well, I didn't live there. I was staying the night.
How is she known to you?
Just a friend. I was just staying the night, one night, and I woke up, the neighbor woke me, knocked on the door, I came down the stairs, car's not in the driveway.
Okay.
I was taken to the scene.
All right. So just a few questions from me in case, unless someone else has a question. Okay. So are you a resident of Uxbridge or no?
No,
Okay.
I live in Sutton.
You live in Sutton, so that's Georgina.
Yes.
Okay. So the policy of Uxbridge Township is if someone who doesn't pay taxes in Uxbridge or their vehicle is in a car accident, and it's the vehicle ownership is in a car accident, and our, which they were,
Yes.
the bill goes to the owner of the vehicle. Now, your municipality, Georgina, if I was in a very similar accident in Georgina, I would also get a bill. So it's just the way that we, as municipalities, recoup our costs for emergency services. Okay? And so that's our policy. That's how we move forward. And typically, the insurance of the vehicle will pay for it if a claim is made.
My insurance, the police would not give a accident report to my insurance company, so I've lost this car, still want me to pay for the car. I've got bills in the mail for collections, and then I get this in the mail. It hasn't stopped, it's still going on. I'm still fighting with my insurance company, I'm still trying to get a car out of this. I can't even go buy a car, they've wrecked my credit rating. I had a car gifted to me from my parents.
Okay. And again, I totally understand. The problem with us making exceptions for a rule that works in 99% of the cases is that the only thing we'd see at this council is we'd be dealing with everyone, every bylaw issue we ever try and make. Every time we try and recoup costs, everyone will come here. In this case, again, someone impaired in a vehicle that you own, you may have some issues with the police, you may have some issues with your insurance company. Unfortunately, we as Uxbridge, with probably the smallest budget out of those three,
yes,
it's not our issue. So, thank you very much for coming in, but if we could get a motion on that, or Todd, do you have a question?
Not a question, I'll just, if it's of help to you, and again, I don't have all the details, but I'm going with what you've given me thus far. From the standpoint, and that is a big difference, like I say, that's why I asked the question when you say take without consent as opposed to stolen. But when it comes down to it, if your repercussions or your ways of getting this back, this becomes civil, right? So your ways of getting this money returned to you is one, through your insurance company. Your insurance company can absolutely get a report from the police. There's no issue whatsoever there. It just costs your insurance company money to do so. They'll tell you to go and do it, but that's not the case. That's their job. You're the one that pays them to have insurance. So that's one avenue, is your insurance company, and that's a fight, I'm sure, as it quite often is. The second avenue that may be available to you is through, if this person that took the car without consent is charged criminally for impaired driving,
She was.
then through that aspect, if there is a conviction or whatnot registered, you could possibly go and speak with the Crown in regards to remuneration as the victim of the vehicle, being a vehicle owner. So that would be you touching base with the Crown involved in the case.
Okay.
Okay?
What kind of motion should we make here, Madam Clerk? Okay. So can we get a motion on this, on whether or not we support or deny the request to forgive the balance from this accident? I would strongly suggest we deny the request, would be my take, but I'd like to get a motion one way or the other. Go ahead, Willie.
Mr. Hurst, before I make this comment, this motion, we've had several accidents come in and asking for compensation back for our emergency services coming in. And as Mayor Barton mentioned, it is something that we try to recoup on. I've had issues with insurance where I was in an accident, and a lot of the compensation back is at the tail end as you go through this process. So it's, you know, I do truly feel for you, but with regards to this issue, I would motion that we decline the request for, the removal of the accident invoice at this point in time.
Okay. Can I get a seconder for that? Todd seconds. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, that's carried. I hope you understand our position.
I understand totally,
Okay,
but
thank you very much.
this has been going on since January 3rd, 2018, and I'm still dealing with it. It's just crazy. I'm getting bills in the mail all the time, and it's just like, I wasn't even involved in it.
Again, I feel for you.
I understand. I do
It just from our position, this is the best course of action for us here. But thanks for your understanding.
Now, can I have time to pay this? Like, it's gone to collections, and it's up like $1,000. I know it's been time, but I've been trying to deal with insurance and get through this.
Yeah. Just give me 1 second. If you want to give me number of months you would suggest here, Phil? Oh, come forward. I think it's gone to collection. I don't know what our options are. Okay. We'll start with Phil.
So thank you. We have in the past worked with Treasury to a maximum of 4 post-dated checks to pay the invoice.
Okay.
Beyond that, it becomes an administrative cost to the Treasury Department.
Okay. Donna, can you make a recommendation here on what our options are?
Has the account been referred to collections?
Yes.
Okay. So you will have to work directly with them, and payment needs to go directly to the collection agency.
I don't know if it's directly gone there just yet. It says here, collection pending. Final notice, collection pending.
Okay. Can we just speak offline after this?
Okay. And then, if you want to come back with a recommendation, then we'll make it when you come back? Okay. Fair enough?
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you very much. All right. Next, we've got Jennifer and friends from Defeat Depression. Come on up. This time I mean it. Yes.
Okay. Mayor Barton, council members, I'm standing before you to talk and inform you about an event that is quickly coming up, the 5th annual Durham Region Walk and Talk about Mental Health on June 9th at Countryside Preserve. 1 in 5 Canadians suffer from mental health challenges. Approximately 4,000 people die by suicide every year. That's 11 people in Canada a day. The WHO, World Health Organization, predicts that by 2020, depression will be the leading cause of disability. Right now, it's the leading cause of short-term disability. This disease does not discriminate. It can sink its teeth into anyone at any time. You can be young or old, man or woman, rich or poor. It doesn't care about race or religion.
My name is Jill Thomas, and I am 1 in 5, one of those 5 people that Jen talks about. I grew up with great parents in a rural community, participated on tons of sports teams and many times as the captain, had a fantastic social life. I went on to have an incredible career, including be given the opportunity to work out of Boston for 3 years, and then promoted to support our entire North American operation as a director of continuous improvement. And it's been a really fantastic life, but I'm going to tell you there was a 3-year period during that time where I couldn't get off the couch. I couldn't mobilize myself to get groceries for my 2 children. I couldn't socialize with family or friends. I couldn't participate in any physical activities. And this was a very hard period in my life, not only for me, but also for the 2 people who love me most, my parents. They truly felt like they were failing. They tried to do what they could to help me. Doctors tried to do what they could to help me, and it was a really difficult and long journey. So this is very personal for both Jen and I and Karen as people who have either been through this or supported someone. So we're here to help gain support in forms of participation or funding, or just compassion for anyone in your life who may be suffering. I can guarantee you from personal experience, this is not a disease of being lazy or making a choice to not work. It really, when it sinks its teeth into you, can take a very dynamic person and turn them into very house-ridden, agoraphobic, stuck inside. So I'm telling you, and if you have any questions and you know someone is suffering, I'd be happy to talk to you. It's a difficult journey to get out of for everyone. Everyone's journey is different, and that's what makes it so complicated. So I'm going to pass over to Jen to wrap it up.
In past years, the town has helped this event with sponsorship and promotion, hoping that this can happen again this year too. Monies raised from the walk go to Ontario Shores Prompt Clinic in Whitby that helps Uxbridge residents and their family members when they are in crisis. We have save the date cards, flyers for you to post. Hits 105.5 FM is helping to promote the event with commercials that started airing yesterday till June 9th, running 3 times a day, 7 days a week. Please help to make this event a successful one. I'd also like to let you know that I am 1 in 5. Thank you.
Ladies, thank you very much for coming up. This was a fantastic event last year, and we wish you all the best success. Let's open it up to questions from council. Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. That is me in the back row there with the white hat on, but I'm totally behind this. What we usually do now, instead of everybody going out and doing their own fundraising, is we make a donation from what we call the Golf Committee Fund. So I'm going to make a motion to refer that. Councillor Pop here is in charge of that, so be nice to him and he'll be very generous to you. So, well, I didn't mean it in that way, but you can take it as you will. But anyway, I will be there with my running shoes on and ready to go through the woods. Hopefully we won't find any ticks, but anyway, that's a whole other story. So.
I just read that lint rollers really help with ticks.
Yeah. Is Carly still involved with your group?
Carly has led this for the past 4 years,
Right,
and due to some situation in her life, she's had to step away.
So she passed the ball to you.
Yeah, so this is all 3 of us, this is our first year, so we're like fish out of water, basically, or chickens with our heads cut off.
We'll pray for good weather. Hopefully not like today, but,
and we do have Boston Pizza and Swiss LA participating
great.
this year. They're going to give kickback revenue sales the day of the event, so that's new this year, and that's fantastic.
Smokehouse last year, I believe, they were there as well. So anyway, I'll make a motion to refer this to the Golf Fund, unless there's any more questions from council. But thank you, ladies, for coming in today.
Oh, go ahead, Pam.
Thank you, ladies, for being here. This is so important, more important than the majority of people realize. We've had it in my family, and it is something that is not controlled. You have no control, but it's defeating it. And I'll be there again. Been there every year, so look forward to seeing you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just a little bit of housekeeping. So one is, we're going to have to give a motion to give them free access to the Countryside Preserve. I don't think we've done that yet. We need to make sure you've got insurance. Do you guys have insurance?
We do have insurance, yes.
Okay, good. Madam Clerk, is there anything else?
I'll add that to my motion,
Yeah.
Mayor Bart.
Okay, and refer to the Golf Fund. Okay. And Pam would like to second that? Okay, and all those in favor? Excellent. That's carried. And could you also email me your first and last name, all 3 of you, because we have to put you all in the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay? Guys, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll be there as well. All right. Donna's back. So what would you like us to do? What motion do you want, Donna?
We've worked out a payment arrangement plan with Mr. Hurst, and we will work with him to receive payments in full over the next 4 months.
Okay. Do you need a motion from us, or that can happen internally?
No, that can happen internally.
Okay, great. Guys, can we go with a 7-minute break or so? Oh, sorry, Dana. Dana's next.
Oh, you take 7 minutes, I'm fine.
No, we'll get all this done first.
I'll be very short.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I think there was a slide there. You may have a copy of it. Is there a piece of paper on your... Oh,
Do I have
you
it?
just put the slide.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Thank you for the short notice and getting the tennis club on the agenda. I just have an update from our president, Louise, who could not be here. I think she made a presentation to council.
Can you give us 1 second
okay,
again,
sure.
more housekeeping? Can I get a motion to have Dana come up and speak? Moved by Gord, seconded by Willie. All in favor? Carried. Thanks. Now you can speak.
So Louise could not be here today, so this is basically just a status update of where we sit. We've been soliciting some assistance with the Rotary, the Bonner Boys, the Optimists, and the Gorgons. Bonner Boys have expressed an interest. I think the other two are a little busy, but the Rotary has stepped up as of yesterday, and they're calling the Trillium people today to see if they detach their name to this venture. And part of what we're trying to do is identify that the 4 courts are needed over at the Fields of Uxbridge, and this is sort of where I come in as the maintenance guru, or whatever you want to call me at the club, and I'm an avid player. But with 40 years in the aggregate business, 35 with Lafarge and 5 on my own consulting, I'm able to, in the last week, just pick away at getting the aggregate donated, with the trucking of the McEwen Contracting, in discussions with them. They would like to give back to the town. He's been here his whole life. They'll contribute some of the contracting site works, gradage, drainage. That still needs to be determined, but it looks like if we can get some sort of a footprint laid out over at the fields, that we could, this could commence with the rough earthworks and let it even settle for a year, which I would agree you'd want to be doing anyway to let the ground settle. I think the Fields of Uxbridge is a fairly easy site to grade and work with, but going the next couple of years, we could look at Miller Paving as part of your overlay. I've had talks with them about getting the asphalt for this project at a discount. They're just up the road. I've seen some of the municipalities where they lay some parking lot stuff and sidewalk stuff and court stuff into their overlay program. And finally, I have an interest in a Armour Stone quarry up north, so I would donate any of the landscape stone required for that. So we're just moving the ball up the line and the train on the track. So we just want to keep this ball moving. Thank you.
Amazing. That's great news. This is a very worthy project. I know how active that tennis court is at the arena. My brother actually backs onto it, and he loves hearing people play as he goes to sleep at night and wake up to people playing again. So we talked about it on the weekend. Thanks for the update. I don't think we need to have a motion or anything, but just keep on doing what you're doing and working with Bob, and we'll make this happen.
And when we hear back from the Trillium people, we'll resubmit.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, can I get a motion for, yes, Todd, Pam. So we'll come back at 22. Thanks. We need to move.
I can push him out to 1:30 if you want.
Yeah.
That's my report, anyway.
Yeah. Okay, let's try and get moving here, guys. Can I get someone for the approval of both sets of minutes, item A and B? Gord, seconded by Todd? Oh, you weren't there. Okay, Pam? Sure. Okay. All in favor? That's carried. All right. Next one is correspondence number 192. This is from...
Are you doing this or me?
Oh, yeah, you do it. You're better at it.
Okay, 192, AMO to the Honorable Carolyn Marini, Reconstruction Act 2017.
Okay, what would we like to do with this, folks? The region have a piece of correspondence later discussing the same thing. I think a motion to support would be helpful. Gary, do you want to give me a motion to support? Okay, a move by Gary, seconded by Pam. All in favor? That's carried.
Correspondence item 193, Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, reaccept soil regulatory proposal.
Ingrid, do you want to speak to this? You have the most experience on this one.
On the housing?
No, this is on soil.
Soil? Debbie
Yeah.
actually did.
Oh, Deb.
Debbie just came from a session on Friday.
Okay, do you want me to speak to it? Okay. Okay, so folks, soil's a big deal. You know, if you think of our neighboring municipalities, you know, big issues in Skugog, big issues in Stouffville, we need to make sure we do this right. How about we get a motion to forward it to the Phil committee for comment, and then we can make sure that any verbiage we require is taken into account. Oh, now you want to speak?
These are a number of changes that have come down to the original excess soil regulatory proposal. So since the Liberals left and the Progressive Conservatives have said hello, they have reviewed. There have been a number of changes. I actually emailed this morning to see if I could get a copy of the presentation from Friday, and they advised that they're just waiting on approval and they should go out today. So once I get that, I will send it out to everyone, and also provide it to the Phil committee. And what we did the last time when the initial proposal came out was the committee reviewed it. We provided a long list of suggestions, some of which they took into account, believe it or not, and actually Uxbridge was even referenced at the session on Friday, which is good for us. So I think it would be worth a review again by the committee just to kind of see where things are at, what we proposed the last time and what they've taken into account. So they're getting there. I think they have, you know, some tweaks to make, but it's going to be onerous though going forward. Once they're in place, it's going to be onerous for the fill operators. So a lot of administrative work that didn't exist before, which is good from our perspective and from the province's perspective and the environment, of course. So.
Excellent. So what would your recommendation be on this? Should we proceed it? Okay. Okay, so motion from Pam, seconded by Todd, to forward this to the Phil committee. All in favor? That's carried.
Correspondence item 194, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, read More Homes, More Choice, Ontario's Housing Supply Action Plan.
Okay, folks, what are your recommendations here? I've got one, but, all right, I'll give you mine then. What I've been lobbying for a while is an expansion of our industrial park. And, when I read through this, that was the item that I think is the most important for us, is to make sure that we've got, more employment lands. So, I think a letter from this council to the province discussing that. There will be one anyway, but that would be my recommendation.
So are you saying your priority is not housing, your priority is the industrial park?
Well, housing is going to happen in Uxbridge up to the limit in which we can provide it. There's lineups for our capacity, so I don't think that's going to happen no matter what letters we send. But the critical piece of infrastructure for us that we can't do on our own is that industrial park. Expansion of. Okay, Gord?
Yeah, there's a part of this that, you know, the government likes to throw in these omnibus bills that touch on just about everything. And Donna sent out an email to everybody last week on the DC implications. I think once that comes forward, it's going to have huge repercussions. And I know it's early days, so we're really talking about something that we don't really know what's going to happen. So I don't know whether there's something that we can take from this, Donna, and push it forward, or did you want to wait till the regulations come out? I mean, it's just proposed at this point, right? So, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so it is just proposed. There's a lot of things that we don't know yet about it. They are having a 1-month consultation period, so up until early June. And then they're expecting that the bill would pass in the fall, 2019.
So is there any point even referring this to you at this point, or are we going to wait until June before we have something more to talk about? What would be your recommendation, I guess, from a staff perspective?
Well, we could wait. I know both Hempson and Watson, they prepare most of the DC studies for most municipalities
yeah, and there's
in Ontario.
a correspondence in here from them as well.
They're really the front leaders, and they will be working with AMO as well as MFOA and consulting with the government.
Right, right. But thank you for that email that you sent out, because it was really, I hope everybody had a chance to read it, because it was good. Thank you.
Okay. So anything else that we should add in this motion? Gord, do you have any suggestions?
Well, we've talked about it, as you know, at the region. Again, we're speculating on things that we don't really know what they're going to be. So I would suggest maybe we receive this.
Okay.
When further information comes available, then actually we can have something to discuss. Because right now it's all kind of, we're proposing this, but we don't really know yet what it's going to look like. So
Sure.
that would be my suggestion.
Okay, so can I get a motion to receive, moved by Gord, seconded by Willie, all in favor? Carried.
Correspondence item 195, Dave Wilkes, President and CEO, Building Industry and Land Development Association, Province of Ontario, announces Housing Supply Action Plan.
What motion do we want here, folks? Okay, Gord?
I don't know if it's a motion. It kind of goes to my earlier comments. Again, it's a whole bunch of things thrown in together here. They've covered everything from soup to nuts. I mean, they're revising LPAT, the DCs, we've talked about that, the parkland development, whatever red tape means. I mean, they're basically contradicting themselves here. They're basically saying we want to go back to what was previously the OMB model, where they can basically strip away a municipality's ability to enforce their own OPs, which have been approved by the province. So to me, it's kind of going in an opposite direction than what they're proposing here. So I would make a motion to receive this, Mr. Mayor, unless there's somebody else that wants to act on it. But there's nothing, again, that we can really do until the rubber meets the road here. So
Okay, so motion received by Gord, seconded by Todd, all in favor? Carried.
196, Region of Durham, recommendation to postpone come into force date of Construction Act.
This goes back to the one earlier from the AMO one to Carolyn Maroney. So this is something that the region wants, I think we want as well. So maybe a motion to support. Pam? A motion to support? Okay, seconded by Gary, all in favor?
just make a subsequent motion that maybe we could refer this to Donna and see what financial implications there would be. Would you mind doing that as well? And bring it back at the next meeting?
Okay.
Because if
So-
there are budget issues, obviously we're gonna have to know about them up front, right? So-
Okay, so friendly amendment to Pam, you'll take that. Gary, you'll take that as well, the friendly amendment? Okay, all in favor? Carried.
Thanks.
Do you have all that?
Yep.
Okay.
197, Regional Municipality Appeal to the Honourable Christine Elliott and the Honourable Steve Clark, Rio Review of Health System Transformation, a Region Appeal Perspective.
Okay. Who wants to speak to this? I'm prepared to if no one else has anything. Okay, so on this, we've spoken about it at the region. There are monies being stripped away from the Ministry of Health. If we look at that AMO list from our last meeting where, all the budget implications, this is one that looks to be quite real. I think we should support this in principle. It, you think of the first presentation we had, which, talked about Lyme disease and West Nile and then, measles outbreaks and all the things that we're gonna see. And at the same time, it appears like we're stripping dollars away from those programs. So, we could have some concerns. We just need to decide as a council which of those 40 items we want to be the champions for. Because if we do them all, we will lose our voice. But so why don't we just get a motion to support and we'll decide what that means later. Okay, so motion from Pam, second by Bruce, all in favor? Excellent, thanks.
Correspondence item 198, City of Oshawa to the Honourable Victor Fedeli, Lakeshore East Corridor expansion to Bowmanville.
Okay, anyone want to speak to this? Go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, I would support this wholeheartedly. I mean, the government, the previous government, I should say, pledged to extend that out to Bowmanville, and I think this government should follow through on that promise. It's a huge driver for all of Durham Region, not just Bowmanville. I mean, all the feeders now go to Oshawa if you're coming from the east. This would extend that line. It would create a better service for the people that are living in Durham that can get to that hub and get out of town and get downtown or wherever they're going to quicker. So I would support this wholeheartedly, and I think every municipality in Durham should be doing that as well.
Anyone want to second that? Okay, from Pam. And Gordon, obviously, we are a member of Durham Region. This affects Durham as a whole in a huge way. And this is something we should be supporting. I agree with you. Yeah, and it makes such a big difference with traffic on the 401 and gets people out of their cars commuting downtown. So, all in favor of that motion for support? That's carried unanimously.
199 Township of McKellar, Re-Ontario Library Services Funding.
Okay, what would we like to do with this?
Through you,
Yep.
Amanda was in here last week talking about she didn't have the info yet. Does anybody know if she's got any more info on this?
Have you seen anything on that?
Not aware at this point. They're looking at a bunch of things, whether they should be mailing.
That's what we
I
talked
think
about, right?
my personal opinion would be that there should be also some discussion maybe with the region. The region operates a courier right now at the regional level.
Right.
And whether or not there may be an opportunity to add to that, to do circulation at least in Durham Region, which kind of brings you to whether or not library services should be regional, right? But anyway.
Well, we won't talk about that today, but I just wondered if she had any more info on the costing, and because that was a big piece of it, as to how much more it would cost or what the cost differentials would be.
I think they're trying to get their head around the volume and then whether or not mail is an option. But I think there, maybe through you to the mayor and to yourself, maybe some discussion too with the region as to whether or not their courier
We'll certainly be
system-
discussing it. I just,
Yeah.
from this perspective, I don't know what we need to do with this other than receive it, so.
So,
I mean, I could support it, but we don't know where OLSN is going at this point, so. So supporting it without knowing where they're headed, I think might be a little premature, so.
If you guys will hear me, why don't we forward this to the library board
Yeah, we can do that.
and have them come up with maybe a recommendation. I know that's being discussed there. Have them come up with a recommendation on what to ask for from a regional perspective, or what correspondence should come from them through us and then up the chain.
Sure.
Certainly,
Sit on that, don't you?
this is one where
You wanna make
service was stripped, and I think there should be a more efficient way of doing it, but let's figure out what that is, and maybe should start at that board.
I'll
Some
make
creative
that
people.
motion.
Okay, great. Moved by Willie, seconded by, hey Gary, you're on the board, do you wanna second that? Okay, all in favor? That's carried.
Correspondence item 200, Township of Mulmer, re-aggregate reform.
Pam, this is your neck of the woods. Okay, so I think a motion to support would be in order on this. We have 52 pits, I think is the number in Uxbridge. Something like 52 pits. This is a big item for us. We need to make sure that we are getting, at least our costs back when it comes to the cost of maintaining our roads because of the heavy trucks. It's a big issue, obviously. Okay, so motion to support. Todd, Pam, all in favor? Carried.
201 we did.
201 I did,
202, Watson and Associates Economics Limited, re-proposed changes to the Development Charges Act.
Donna, do you want to speak to this one? No, we did already.
Okay, so this is from Watson. They also prepare DC studies too, so they're just really outlining the impact that the proposed changes will have. So for one thing, the biggest thing that will affect us is the DCs. Currently, we charge DCs for public works, fire, and engineering. And under the proposed legislation, we would continue to do so. We also have been charging development charges for library, animal control, parks and recreation, and also general government. And under the proposed new legislation, we would no longer be charging DCs for those services. Rather, we would be allowed to do a charge under the Planning Act and we would be able to charge a capped prescribed rate based on the value of the land. We're not sure what the percentage will be yet, but we are concerned about it. We think that there will be a loss to the township, and we think that in the future, when we go to do projects that are related to growth, we'll probably end up with shortfalls. We won't have the funding in place that we would have under this current DC module, so we are quite concerned about it. And then there's another item which is concerning too, is that when a developer does a zoning and site plan, when they're actually approved, the development charges that they'll pay in the future will be locked in at the time that the approval is given. So then, they could take out a permit 5 years later, but they would be paying the DCs at the rate 5 years prior. So again, we're concerned that there will be shortfalls in place for funding that the municipality will have to pay for infrastructure in the future.
Okay. Okay. Yes, please.
Just a comment while you're thinking there. We talked about this, I think it was last week, just this tsunami of information coming from where the current government's changing their funding model. I think we just need to continue to bring it in. I think we said last week, wasn't it, that we'll continue to funnel that towards Donna and have her assess the impact, and then the bigger discussions will start. I think we're going to have to get into budget sooner than later this year, as soon as we can, when I think it's typically September you start. So I don't know if we can do it in the summer just to start bringing this together, but early indications it's going to be a tough haul.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a point, the good thing is that the new pool, we've been collecting development charges on that facility since the 90s. The negative part is, though, there's a lot of work that is going to be covered by development charges for the fields of Uxbridge that you may not be collecting. That's going to be the hard part. So you may be looking at scaling back or just trying to do things differently for the fields of Uxbridge.
And I think just like, we were talking tennis, the update from the tennis club today is looking at building these things in a very, very creative way. I think we need to have an Uxbridge approach when it comes to these types of projects. Using the expertise we have from our residents, using, partner businesses to help us wherever possible, because the people that live in this town want to see it improve, and they typically put their energy and dollars where their mouth is. So we'll continue to cultivate that and take advantage of things like Trillium. All right, so on that motion, Bruce, what would you like it to be? Maybe just motion to receive?
Yeah, I think it's just a motion to receive and continue to accumulate with all the other documentation that we're getting from the province.
Okay, moved by Bruce, seconded by, go ahead.
Just through you to Donna, on the whole DC bylaw, it's on today's agenda to pass it. Once this thing goes through its consultation phase, if I can call it that, so in mid-June, are they now going to tell us we have to amend the DC bylaw that we just passed?
Okay, so basically the information that we have is any DC bylaws passed after May 2nd, the legislation that will come into effect, we expect in the fall of 2019, it will be impacted by these proposed changes. So there will be some transition periods because they can't say all of a sudden you can't charge anymore, but you've got in place in order to charge in the future. So we do expect that there will be a transition period of when, I think we would have time to do a study and we would have time to get the new rates in effect before we had to make the changes. So what will happen now is the DC bylaw that we're asking you to adopt today, it's done in such a manner where we've got schedules, different schedules, so that when the legislation does come into effect, the schedules related to fire and engineering and public works, they will continue. But the other schedules that are related to services such as the ones that we will no longer be able to charge DCs for, they're on a separate schedule, so we can repeal those schedules, and the DC bylaw will be okay to be in effect for the next 5 years. And then we'll just have to deal with the new legislation. But we do expect that there will be transition periods.
So would we be on the hook then for paying Hampson or whoever to do an update on the one bylaw that we're passing today, I guess. So we have to go through a whole other process, I guess, this fall or something like that.
So, and it's not clear yet, I don't think we have all the information, I don't even know if the province has thought it all out entirely yet. We're hoping that a lot of the work that we've done with this DC study, we're hoping that we'll be able to take that work and put it towards a new strategy, so we won't be starting from scratch.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, if there is an amendment and another study is required, we will have to pay. But we've
So
already
there-
been through a very detailed process, so we're hoping that they'll be able to use that and work with it.
So there could be costs that we'd have to absorb in next year's budget to deal with this then, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Gord, do you want to second that motion to receive? Okay, all in favor? Carried.
Can I ask a question? What are soft services defined? How are they defined?
Yeah, so go ahead, Dawn.
The soft services are defined as, general government, animal control, parks and recreation, and library, sorry.
Fire Public Works are just the third?
So,
Hard services?
yeah, they're considered hard service and they're not discounted, so the soft services are discounted services.
Everything else.
Okay. What's next?
Correspondence item 203, Daniel DeLeo, Goodwood Cartways, re-extension to significant completion dates of site plan agreement.
Pam?
I think we should do this. I mean, the weather has impeded him to do the final stages of getting these temporary storage units out. It's everything out our way has been delayed. Wonderful weather that we're having. So I would like to move that we extend an extension to May 31st to give him the needed time to finish up
Okay.
his agreement.
May 31st, what, is that what he asked for?
Yeah.
There's two.
Oh yes, there's two.
Do you want to give them both the August date and the May date?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Seconded by Willie, all in favor? Carried.
Correspondence we did that. Well, actually, we didn't do the correspondence. 204, Thomas P. Grace, Reed Grace and Associates, Phase 1 summary of excess fill for Dagmar, 1220 Lake Ridge Road.
Why don't we table that until we're going to bring it up again?
Sure.
Pam, do you want to make that motion? Seconded by Gord? Bueller? All in favor of the table? Okay, carried.
205, Mark and Debbie Woodhouse, concerns regarding the proposed installation of Rogers Communication Tower in Zephyr.
Okay, I think at our last meeting, we dealt with all the issues that they had. I also had a resident reach out with a proposed location that was forwarded to Rogers last week, so, that's outside of town. Go ahead.
When he was here last week, he was talking about he had to go back to his engineering. Did that occur, or?
I don't know if that occurred or not, but if they come back another time and ask for it without any technical people.
So he's gotta have that piece, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just don't want this going around in circles, so it's,
Yeah,
okay, thanks.
yeah, he's supposed to work with Cosmin as well, so, yeah, why don't we go with a motion to receive? Moved by Pam, seconded by Gary. And Gary, can you reach out to them? Can you reach out to thanks. Just send them a quick email or something. Okay, all in favor? Carried.
Correspondence item 206, Tish McDonald, re-acknowledgement and thanks to Uxbridge resident Fred Bernard on the 75th anniversary of D-Day, making a service in landing on Juno Beach, June the 6th, 1944.
Okay, just a quick update on this. I saw Tish's post about it online, and already had a scroll made up, so, this has already been done before I saw this email, but, unbelievable what Fred Bernard, how he served our country, and, the sacrifice that he made, so, Go ahead, Gordon.
I talked to, not specifically about this, but to Tish on Saturday night. It might be appropriate to present this publicly, like in here.
Oh, that's great.
Or at the Legion, I mean, wherever the preference is, and give them the plaque or whatever we're planning to do, and then do it publicly rather than kind of send it off, you know what I mean?
No, I was either gonna do it like personally in the
So
living
maybe you
room or
could touch
something.
base with Tish and see if we could arrange a time to have him come in and,
I'll just comment on it. I've talked to Tish about that. Fred is very, very private, and I'll just talk about my dad was involved in this as well, and most of them rather not talk about it and really don't like notoriety with it. So I think your last part is best. Let's target that through Tish and get her feedback on it, but it could actually make it worse. I think you'll be happy to get the recognition, but that's why on her note it says, please funnel everything through her home.
It's sitting on Colleen's desk right now, so however we deal with it. Todd?
Yeah, I would agree with Bruce on that. I think there's 2 points to this. One is recognizing him while he's still here, but two, giving something that he can pass on to his family, that his family will have from Uxbridge.
All right, so how about we've done kind of the action on this already, so let's just go with the motion to receive, if that works. Okay, who wants to make that? Todd, Pam, all in favor? Carried. Oh, this is me? Oh, excellent. So we have committee meetings minutes, A, B, C. Can we get someone to move those minutes? Pam? Oh, you can't do that. Can someone move those? Willie,
I'll make the
you were at
motion to
bottom.
move them.
Okay, seconded by Bruce. All in favor? Carried. Okay, next, am I doing all these now? Yep. Okay. All me. Next, we've got a report from Bob Ferguson in regards to the King Street Parkette. And why don't we bring forward Deb's report on the exact same issue that's on the addendum. So we'll discuss them both at once. Ferg, do you want to come up, and we might have a couple questions for you. Whose cell phone is on the table there? All right, any questions for Bob on this? Or Bob, do you want to just go through kind of how we got here? It's in both reports, but...
Yeah, sure, I can give a bit of back history. The King Street Park has been in question a little bit more detail in Deb's report as far as the history with what's come before council. It's a small, basically a building lot parcel that's located on King Street in between Balsam and Cedar. We see very low activity in that park. It currently just has a swing set that's left there with a sandbox. We will be getting into some fencing issues as well as some major tree trimming and stuff like that. So there is maintenance that's going to be required to this park coming up, substantial maintenance. So that's why I wanted to kind of get a decision from council is what is the long-term forecast for this park and what are we doing before we start to tackle all these.
Okay. And I'll just jump in for a second. I've got close friends that live like a block from there. I've ridden my bike by it, driven by it, thousands of times, and I never noticed it was there. It hides really well. It's I've never seen anyone in it. I think it's a underused resource for sure. Anyway, Todd, this is your ward. Pam, if you want to speak to it first, you had your hand up.
The parkette is between Beach and Balsam. Yes. Because at first when I read this, I go, there's no parkette between those other two. I drove past there this morning just to refresh my memory. The trees are very overgrown. I noticed that the retaining wall, the blocks, that's shot. There's fencing down that one side that's shot. And at one time, I lived really close to that, and it stopped having much use in the early 80s. I mean, I know that because I was near there, and my parents lived near there. And it's just kind of crazy, just for the lack of use.
Any other comments on this? Oh, sorry.
Just a distant memory of this being in the news years ago. Wasn't there a whole thing where the township was prepared to sell it off, and then that went sideways? A lot of people got really concerned about it. And is that where we're at, and it's just coming back around again?
It's coming back again.
Is there is there a recommendation then, Bob? What are you thinking we should do? What's your thought on it?
Deb, I think, had a recommendation in her report.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
You're right. It has come up a number of times, as I said in my report, back into the 80s. It came forward, and then it came forward, and then it came forward, and then it came forward again. So as far as we got the last time was actually to a public planning meeting. We had that. The council chambers were full, as it says in my report. It has always been a contentious issue when the item has been brought forward. We also, from the public planning meeting, full council chambers, then our consultant planner Liz Housen, her report came forward for consideration. Again, the council chambers were full, and at that point, council decided not to proceed any further with it. It is, as mentioned in my report, it is listed in the Parks Master Plan, basically leaving it with us to decide whether or not the township wants to declare it surplus. It is in the list of items that could be considered to be surplus based, as Bob has indicated a number of times, that it is seldom used. There is very little equipment in there. So at this point, I'm just looking, as my recommendation is that council provide direction in terms of where they want to go with it, whether they feel it's surplus to the needs, and because it's being underutilized, and then either proceed forward. There are a number of things we'd have to do with it. Again, going through the rezoning process, we'd basically have to start from square one on that and move through the rezoning, and then we'd have to do a environmental study on the property as well, because we're zoning to a more sensitive use. So there is a lot of work that needs to happen. The appraisal is very outdated, so there would be a new appraisal required. But the last time around, the value, which is, I believe, 2011, was $160,000 for that piece of property. So it does have some value.
Yeah. Go ahead, Todd.
Okay, yeah. As you mentioned, being the ward councillor, it was something that was mentioned to me as early as when I was canvassing. So there are certainly those that would be opposed to us doing anything with it other than keeping it as parkland. I'm going to take a wild guess based on the dates that were just handed out there. You know, if this started in the 80s as one of the options to close that park, it would have been because of Quaker Common being completed and there being a park in that area. Plus now we have Bonner Brothers who have added the splash pad and whatnot to the arena parkland. So you have a very large parkland area that is available to those residents. The only thing I would suggest, and I believe this is the case anyway, is anything, the money from that sale would then be used within parkland moving forward. So our we're constantly concerned about taxpayers' dollars and how much we are adding on to them. So here is an area that, as the Parks Master Plan says, is really not being used in the most productive and efficient way. It's also not being used in the most financially responsible way. So if we can use that money elsewhere within the township for proper parks to be dealt with, then I think that's probably the better route.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just for the new council, the Parks Master Plan was actually approved by the previous council in the fall of 2018. And within that plan, there are proposed properties that could be available to be disposed of And the idea being that parkland, when it is sold, the money goes back into parkland. So basically, it's just about moving the resources. There are two, they talk about developing 2 properties on Joseph Street, the south end of Harima Fields, the Uxpool Diamond at some point in time, and facility when a new pool is built, and we have the Arena Diamond listed as well, and the King Street Parkette. Those were the 5 properties that were listed in the plan that council approved last fall. They didn't approve selling them off, but that's because there's simply a process that needs to happen in order for these properties to be declared surplus, to get rezoned, and then to be listed for public to purchase.
Go ahead, Gordon.
Without stirring the hornet's nest from the past, I was the ward councillor, and it was quite a contentious issue. I don't know what feedback you've had since then. Aside from that, and what made the decision for me not to support selling it, was 2 things. One of them being Liz Housen's recommendation not to rezone it. Number 2, when we did the financial analysis on this, by the time you added up the studies, the cost, what it would take to service that lot, I think the net, Bob, if I stand corrected, was less than 50,000 or something. So really to go through the process and get all that done in order to sell it, because you have to have a service lot obviously to sell it, and the mains do not run along King Street, they run I think on Balsam from what I remember. So once you add up the numbers, it didn't make financial sense, plus the grief, as I said, from the local residents. So I did not support it for those 2 main reasons, was that our own planner said it wasn't worthwhile doing so.
Go ahead.
I would just, and that may, and maybe things have changed since then, but my question would be then, I mean, he's certainly telling us now that, what would it cost to make it a park that it's supposed to be?
I mean, it just goes to the extent of how much we want to get involved in adding to it. If you're looking at equipment, adding equipment to it, then you're into $30,000-$40,000, fixing fences, at a shared cost of probably another 15 to 20,000, retaining walls, tree trimming. It's a park that's not necessarily been neglected. We've kept it up to standard and stuff like that, but it's aging, and these are the things that come along with it.
Yeah, so on that point, Gord, my question would be, would we rather make 50,000 or spend 50,000? Even though it's not a great amount, it's still 50,000 that can go elsewhere and make good use of.
You're the ward councillor, so you can...
Yeah. No, and then the market since 2011 has drastically changed as well. It was 13, but at the moment a building lot in Uxbridge is probably worth, I don't know, 4, something like that is my guess. Probably $400,000. What do you think, Gord? Am I close? Really?
The one at Planks is up for 400,000.
Okay. Again, I could be wrong. Yeah. All right. So, folks, someone give me a motion, one way or the other. Todd, do you want to give me a motion? Okay. So, can you make that into a motion? Just
to clarify, are we looking for direction here to say, are we going to put it up for sale? Isn't that the point we're at? We're at the Y in the road.
So I think we need to make that decision. We haven't had a lot of conversation on this as we've had 0 until today as a council. This doesn't necessarily fit into our long-term parks vision, but we don't want to go through a major process here if there's not a return, like if we're going to sell it for almost $0, right?
Should we then receive it and put it back to staff to give us that?
Sure. So So, no, and I
What
think
amount?
my right ear just told me that as well.
Okay.
So, so why don't we get a motion then to have staff come back with a recommendation after looking at, you know, market
Rezoning.
pricing, what it could cost to service this lot, just so we have the full picture to make a decision based on.
So cost to prepare for sale and what it would be valued at.
Yes.
So there's a step that we need to do first. For the land to have any value, we need to rezone it. So that's the cart that needs to be before. You have to get that property rezoned. If you sell it right now to somebody, by declaring it surplus, somebody else is gonna have to go through the process to rezone it. I think you'd feel better knowing that it could be sold for a building lot because it is allowed to be used for that through zoning. To me, I think a report should come back speaking to all of the properties that are listed in the Parks Master Plan and get direction from all of them in regards to rezoning and declaring them surplus. And then that way you'll have an idea, because those properties intended in the Parks Master Plan to be made available for sale in order for you to advance your agenda at the Fields of Uxbridge. So we may as well just do them all at once. Get the process started and council can give direction on that.
I think so. I think we should have at least a pretty decent base cost on what these are worth. I don't know if we need to go through the full appraisal system or know that, you know, the last 4 building lots in Uxbridge sold for X, which means a building lot on this street or this street should be worth approximately this much money. The more complex properties would be, we would need to
More
look
on.
at. Yeah, it would be more difficult to get the pricing on. So,
So a recommendation on the cost of rezoning for those requiring rezoning. I guess they all would require rezoning.
they'd all require rezoning.
If they're parkland currently. What,
That's what Ingrid would like us to do, is take
Well,
them on.
I think it makes sense.
To me, you have a heavy agenda coming with the new pool, and everybody knows that the pool at some point needs to be replaced. And I would hate for you to start thinking about rezoning when you're tendering the pool. You might want to get it done and get the money in your bank and be able to at least advance forward, rather than waiting until such time that the shovel's in the ground and now you're having to go through the rezoning process. The problem with the rezoning too is you always have to remember that it could be appealed, so it can take time for this to all play out.
yeah, so my motion would be for all 4, I guess there's 4 properties that are left, correct?
What I would probably do in the short term is do Harima, King Street, and the properties on Joseph Street by Elgin Park. Those would be the ones, and I wouldn't worry about the Uxpool property yet. I think you're gonna have a lot on your plate just with those 3. Could support multiple residential, which is at basically the north end of that new development, yeah.
Okay, so this, Todd, are you making this motion?
Yes.
Oh, Gordon's
Gord
question, sorry.
was?
Just to Ingrid's point, though, if you're gonna consider whatever that list is, the short list, I think there has to be some kind of staff rationale, somewhat similar to what Bob did for each of these, saying by doing this, this is what you're up against. Like, you have to replace this park, or you have to do whatever. So it's not just a matter of selling it and getting the cash and putting it in the bank. You have to know, A, that that's surplus to our needs, and this is why, and by removing this parkette or whatever from the loop, this is what we're up against. So either we have to replace it, or we have to, the monies will go to the pool or wherever, rather than just arbitrarily saying we're putting 4 of them on the market, because I think that...
No, it's, yeah, definitely have to, and they all have to be, if we do, I still believe that we should do all 4 in this aspect as far as getting the information.
Yeah.
Why wait for the information? We can still separate each one when it comes to making decisions.
But I think
Doesn't have to
before
be a
you
decision
start-
overall for all 4.
Before you start spending money on going through a rezoning or even getting an appraisal, you probably want to know in your head, or as a council's head, do we support getting rid of that park or whatever piece of land, right? So
Yeah. Let me jump in for a second, if you
So maybe
don't
your
mind.
report could speak to that short list and then the rationales for doing it.
Yeah. I'm just, what I'm wondering about, I think we might want to take one of these on at a time. And just the reason, the King Street one, I think it's pretty obvious where this needs to go. Again, when I've got close friends with kids in the neighborhood who I don't think have ever gone there. And some of them are in high school now. I think it's so underutilized because there's such great parkland assets in the Quaker Common, which is so close to this neighborhood. I think it's fairly simple. I think if we move forward on looking at the financials on the King Street piece first, and then we can bring the next ones forward. I think this is a fairly simple one that this has been kicked down the road for. Okay, fair enough. From the outside looking in, it feels, yeah, it feels fairly simple from the outside looking in. I hear what you're talking about, Gord. But why don't we separate these and do this one first? What do you think, Todd? Or do you want to do it all at once?
I prefer to do all four.
Okay.
As far as getting a background knowledge and understanding as to what those entail as far as what they're worth to us, and therefore we now we already know that we have the fields of Uxbridge to deal with. And the taxpayers, we're constantly telling them that we're trying to do anything we can not to put it onto their tax base. Well, the only other way to not put it onto their tax base that is right in front of us is to deal with the lands that we don't need.
Okay. So just to get a clear direction from council now, someone give me a motion to do just the King Street piece at once first, and then we'll vote on that, and then we'll decide if we do them all together. Is that fair? Just that way it's a vote of council. But it shouldn't be you, because you don't want to go that way. Can someone just give me that, yeah?
It might be helpful, without actually going through the whole exercise, is to contact or have staff contact Liz and see, council is now considering going in the direction of possibly eliminating this parkette. What would it take for her to reconsider it under her planning regime that would be different than what it was in 2014 or whatever? In other words, I don't want to spend money paying her to go through an exercise and have her come up with exactly the same answer, to refuse it. So that might be worthwhile, to sort of get a jump on things. Whether she will offer an opinion, I don't know. Specifically to the King Street parkette.
Right.
The other ones we haven't really touched on yet, I don't think so. Maybe Ingrid, you want to comment on it?
Part of the reason why the last council agreed to do the Parks Master Plan was specifically to provide the justification on those properties becoming surplus. Up until then, there really hadn't been any sort of evaluation on all of our parkland to see what potentially could be a way. I think that, my hope is that in speaking with her, that she'll feel comfortable enough that that is enough justification in order to change her recommendation, right? Because that's what the whole purpose of that report was, because we knew we wanted to sell some land, and that report was designed that could be basically the basis of doing it.
But in the absence of having the parks plan, she was asked to do this particular one, and for whatever reasons, I forget the actual planning rationale, but decided to refuse it. And I think there was a final clause in there, it's in Debbie's report, about the surrounding residents. Remember, there was something at the end of it. Wanted to take a scaled-down version of a park and just have open space, basically, where they could go and sit on the bench and walk the dog or whatever, right? So if there's something in it that would trigger her to go in another direction, I'd be willing to look at that, but I don't going through a whole planning exercise and then finding out she says, well, it doesn't warrant doing it.
Again, I totally hear what you're talking about, and I agree.
So if we can save money that way, maybe.
Let's talk about whether or not we're going to deal with all four at once, or we're going to deal with one at a time. So, someone give me a motion to deal with one, just this one. And if that doesn't go through, then Todd will give us a motion to do all of them at once.
Well, you have my report, so you can just deal with the report in terms of what you want your direction to be.
Okay.
So, but you have Bob's on the floor right now.
Okay. So let's deal with Bob's right now. Can we get a motion to, your recommendations, Bob, were just basically received, right? Can I get a motion
It was to receive and get a recommendation from council on what we're going to do.
in terms of the maintenance, yeah?
I think he's just looking for direction, yeah, maintenance, or he's
Yeah.
gonna put it for sale. So there's more to it than just
But-
receiving.
But Deb's report is more in-depth, so if we just receive Bob's and then deal with it on Deb's, it might make more sense. And both are sort of on the floor right now. So how about can we get a motion to receive Bob's? Okay, Pam, seconded by Gary, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, now, Deb's report, it's right here. Nope, where's yours? I just wanna look at your recommendation. Council direction? Okay. So, if someone moves the recommendations, the recommendation of Deb's report, first of all, that it's received for information, and that council provide direction on a sale of the King Street Parkette. So, if someone moves that, and it doesn't pass, then we'll go to Todd's motion of doing it all at once. I'm just trying to get direction on which way we go with this. So can someone give me a motion, please? Nobody can. Does that mean that everyone wants to do them all at once? Okay, good. So, someone give me a motion and then we'll vote on that. Todd? Yours? Yep.
I would give a motion.
Okay. So we need action on her report, but I guess it could be that we receive this report. And, yeah,
Sorry, receive the report and, send back to staff to, further look at this one as well as the 3 additional properties that were in the master plan for the same purposes.
okay,
How's that?
that works? Does that work? With the pool or without?
I would say at this point, you do all of them as far as, an understanding of where we're at with them cost, what they're valued to us based on the fact that we're dealing with Fields of Uxbridge and taxpayers' money either is gonna pay for it or to venture, or we're gonna have money that can be allocated to it.
Okay.
That's my rationale.
Okay. That works. So to have all of them, including Uxpool, and have staff give recommendations on all, right? Including financials. Ingrid, can you do that? Does that work?
Basically, this is what the report's gonna say. It's gonna basically give you timelines on how long it's gonna take.
Yep.
It's going to give you estimates on what the cost is gonna be to take it through the rezoning.
Yep.
It's gonna give you the what-ifs, which, like, what if it gets appealed? What does
Yep.
that look like?
Yep.
In some cases, I'll be able to, or Bob will be able to tell you how many lots could potentially come off of that. And in the case of the Uxpool property, it is small, and we can do it, but there's been some discussion about whether or not some of that land should be maintained for something else, so we can look at it all, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and give recommendations on all, which could include, don't do this right now. Wait.
Could be that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That works. So, does everybody understand Todd's motion? A nod of the head would be great by everyone. Is that motion? Okay. Right, so, seconder for it? A seconder, I can't second it, so a seconder for Todd's motion?
If we don't get a second,
Then we don't do it.
then
Then
we
we-
don't do
when
anything.
there's no
But then we
motion.
still need to do something with,
Yeah,
we're back to square one, we're gonna have to go
Yeah.
back and visit the one that we,
right.
Or you put something else forward.
Or someone then says, no parkland will ever be sold in Uxbridge or something, whatever you decide. Yes,
Just for clarity, we're asking for a rationale. We're not declaring these properties
No.
surplus.
No.
We're asking for a report
We're asking
to
for
tell-
rationale behind, and really behind the
And the-
master plan
And
that
the
was already put into
the
place.
implications of doing it and what we're up against.
Yes.
Yes.
There's no yes or no yet at this point.
just be ready, the next meeting is gonna be at the arena.
I understand, that's why we kinda wanted to do these in chunks.
But just to be clear, so basically it's gonna say, here's the start to the finish on the rezoning, and it's going to give you an estimate on what the cost is gonna be, what potentially could be the number of lots that could be taken out of there, and then it'll talk about what the appeal process would look like and what all of those costs are gonna be, from legal, from planning, from servicing, if we can get that. That's basically how I envision it going, and then council can come back and you can say, okay, we're prepared to spend $50,000 on rezoning King Street. We're prepared to spend $250,000 on rezoning the south end of Harriman. It'll be something along those lines that you'll be able to then come back and say, we would like to approve this one and this one to move forward, and we'll provide the budget for it. And the idea being that you have to be interested in selling them, because this is money that will come out of an account that basically you'll recover your costs on the sale of the property. So you have to be comfortable enough that you're prepared to go down that road and you're prepared to look at selling it, because we need to recover the costs on the exercise of rezoning and all of those costs that are associated with that. If you don't have it, just don't make it about wanting to do it just to see. It has to be like we're committed to go down that road to recover our costs, because those costs won't be recovered unless you sell.
Okay, can we get a seconder for Todd's motion? Oh, you second it? Yeah, okay. All right, okay, all in favor?
Just one question. What's the cost of the report? What's the assessment gonna cost us ballpark?
It's internal costs, isn't it?
Staff time? So that's it? We can figure out what the cost of a value of a property is?
Yeah.
Okay, just to be clear, if you're rezoning a property, there's going to be, especially with the south end of Harriman, where you're trying to rezone it residential, we're gonna go through a pre-consultation as a municipality. That means Conservation Authority will be there, the region will be there, there'll be a number of studies that will need to be undertaken in order to justify it. It's not simply just rezoning it. We'll have the exact same process that a developer would have in the rezoning. And that's where the cost can definitely add up.
Okay, but Ingrid, just for clarification, that cost isn't in this motion. That cost is the next step after this motion, when you start to look at each one individually at that point. All I'm saying is, why start individually when you can get the information that allows us to see what will rezoning cost for each of them? Right?
I'm saying exactly what you're saying. I'm just saying that what you're gonna end up with, let's say it'll say Harriman Fields. Here's all the studies that have to happen for Harriman Fields, and here's the estimated budget. Here's the timeline of it. Here's Liz's cost. Here's the lawyer's cost. Here's what the rezoning could potentially cost. And you'll end up saying, okay, $250,000 to rezone Harriman. Are we in or are we out? That will be your question to yourselves.
On the next phase. So right now, it's just getting that information so we can make an informed decision.
Right.
And I guess just I'll share a little bit as well. The reason why I'm struggling with this is I see one asset as I don't really feel I'm not sure we want to dispose of it. So to look at it, add it into the mix to go there, at a building that we have that within that space on that property, like the pool is one thing, but the senior center in that space is another. If that's gonna be included or not or capped, I don't know, but I just like to, I don't know if we need to go, to me, 1 to 4 isn't necessarily the answer.
I don't know that anything in the master plan had anything to do with the senior center. It was One Park Drive. One Park Drive was my understanding, correct?
Okay, so we're in the middle of a vote, and we've been talking a lot. Can we redo that vote? So this was moved by Willie, seconded by Gord. No, sorry, moved by Todd, seconded by Gord. Sorry about that. To have a report come back to give us the costing, the cost to rezone and to develop multiple pieces of property. That would be Joseph Street, King Street, what's that address for the pool? One Parkside, and Harriman Fields, the north end of Harriman Field. Okay. Didn't you say north before? South, sorry.
North end of the new development.
Oh, north end of the new development. Thought you said north. Okay. Let's try this again. All in favor? Okay, so that's unanimous. All right, next. My computer fell asleep. Thanks, Bob. Oh, yeah, we have the resolution on, or you know what, I can. Which report? Okay, yeah, let's do Todd's report first. Todd, do you want to speak to it? No, just the report speaks for itself. The report speaks to itself, but if you wanted to say a couple words, that'd be great.
Sure. I would just, there's nothing really to add. I mean, the report is pretty straightforward, very clear. You know, my apologies to anyone that is concerned or affected by the fact that my attendance hasn't been perfect. Certainly working with Debbie and with my employment as far as making sure that going forward, keeping in mind, you know, just a little bit of background for the policing world. We organize our entire time off in September, October of the year prior. So all of this year was already done prior to me even going into putting in for election. So as far as being brought in as your council representative for Ward 5. So that's not an excuse, that's simply a statement of information and fact. So going forward, certainly I can't promise I will be at every single meeting. I don't think any one of us here on council can, but I will be doing my utmost, as I have been, moving dates and times on the calendar as I can. Again, for going forward, 2020, 2021, and 2022, I now have full access to making my holidays and my time off, using it for these dates specifically. So I will be doing that.
Okay. Can I get a motion to receive then, or if there's any questions on that report? Okay. Motion to receive by Pam, seconded by Willie. All in favor? Wait, that was, can we try that again? Yeah, you can vote on it. Okay, all in favor? That's carried, thanks. All right, next we've got the resolution. Okay, so this is resolution number 2019-06, May 13th, 2019, moved by Willie Pop, seconded by, Gord, is that you? Gary Verona. This is safer, slower streets, 30 km/h residential street pilot. Whereas currently the Highway Traffic Act stipulates that the speed limit of 50 km/h, 50 on a highway within a local municipality or within a built-up area. And whereas the probability of pedestrian survival is about 90% if struck by a motor vehicle traveling at 30 km/h, while survival is reduced to 20% if struck by a motor vehicle traveling 50 km/h. And whereas lower speed limits are more compatible with active transportation and create safer, better engaged, healthier, and more inclusive communities, and whereas road safety is a challenge that evolves with the growing population, new technologies, and urban and rural development, and sharing the road with vulnerable road users such as pedestrians, cyclists, senior drivers, and driver fitness in light of an aging population and health issues. And whereas the Township of Uxbridge has a goal of moving towards zero, being a leader in keeping with the province's roads among the safest in North America, and reducing collisions, injuries, fatalities by lowering speeds to 30 km/h. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Uxbridge lobby the province to amend the Highway Traffic Act to a default limit of 30 km/h for local streets, with municipalities able to increase speed limits on local streets in a case-by-case basis by bylaws and posted signage. And that the Council directs staff, the Township of Uxbridge appointed Speed Review Committee, the Durham Regional Police, and members of the public to help the province develop a pilot 30 km/h speed limit demonstration project focused on mixed use, reduced speeds, a mechanism to record and analyze before and after data in the Township of Uxbridge, and that this resolution be forwarded to Premier Doug Ford MPP Peter Bethenfalvey, who's the president of the Treasury Board, MPP Jeff Durek, the Minister of Transportation, DRPS, Durham Region, and AMOM. All those in favor? Carried. Thanks.
Any idea what the cost is going to be?
So the idea here is that the cost is minimal because we don't have to change all the street signs.
Yeah, that would be the main cost, yeah.
So, but this means that we can have a default of 30 instead of a default of 50. Because if you try and drive, say, almost any of the curvy streets in Barton Farms or, say Campbell Drive, if you're driving 50 through areas of those streets, it's not safe. We all know it's not for many of these streets. So that's the idea. And then for the areas where it is safe to go faster, we'd have the increased limit. Yeah, and Vision Zero is a big deal at the region at the moment. Okay. Any other questions on that resolution? All right. What's next, Madam Clerk? Bylaws, okay. I had one question on bylaws that was answered. So if anybody doesn't know the 058, the Lucky Blossom Investments, that's the golf course. It's the golf course. Yeah. That was my question this morning. All right. Who has the bylaws? Oh, and is there any other questions on bylaws? Anyone? Go ahead, Gord.
Could we pull 69, have a separate vote on it?
Sure. Which one is 69?
The cannabis.
Oh, our cannabis policy? Sure. So we'll pull 69. Do you want to discuss it? Why don't we do it first then, Gord? Do you want to discuss it or do you just want to pull it?
Oh, I was just going to vote on it separately.
Okay, no problem. So let's vote on it first.
Okay.
Who wants to read 69?
You got the bylaws, don't you?
Go ahead.
They were sequential in the order.
Just read 69 and then we'll do a separate vote.
Pull my bylaw list up. Do we have any other one, right?
Any other polls of any of these bylaws,
Just
folks?
omit 69 from the list.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody ready? First and second reading that leave be granted to introduce bylaw number 2019-069 and the same be read a first and second time.
Can I have
All those in favor?
recorded vote, Madam Chair, or Madam Clerk?
Sure. Recorded vote is always in order. But it'll take a couple minutes.
Sorry.
Okay, so this is 69, and this is the Uxbridge Retail Cannabis.
Just while Madam Clerk's getting ready, this is, just to make sure I'm on the same page, relates directly to the report that we had from Catalina last week, so we've all
Yeah.
had, no, just making sure.
Yep.
Okay, so we had a recorded vote requested by Councillor Hyatt, with respect to bylaw number 2019-069. Councillor Beach.
Yay.
Councillor Ruona. Your mic's not on.
I'm not completely clear on what we're voting on here, since we've already dealt with it.
So, but now we're voting on the bylaw. So we dealt with Catalina's report, now it's to put it into law. So it's
Okay.
the bylaw to do that.
To adopt the policy.
Yeah, I'll vote yes.
Councillor Garrard?
Yay.
Sorry.
Yay.
Councillor Pop?
Yay.
Councillor Snooks?
Nay.
Councillor Hyatt?
No.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Okay, next.
Third reading?
Oh, yeah, reading. Oh, do we have to do that twice for a recorded vote? Do you want it twice for this, and you okay with? Okay, third reading. Go ahead.
Moved by Councillor Pop, seconded by Councillor Ruona, that bylaw number 2019-069 be now read a third time, finally passed, and the mayor and clerk duly sign and seal same.
All in favor? It's passed.
First reading and second reading, moved by Councillor Pop, seconded by Councillor Ruona, that leave be granted to introduce bylaws 2019-056 to 2019-068 and 2019-070 to 2019-076 be read a first and second time.
All those in favor? Carried.
Third reading, moved by Councillor Pop, seconded by Councillor Ruona, that bylaw number 2019-056 to 2019-068 and 2019-070 to 2019-076 be read a third time, finally passed, and the mayor and clerk duly sign and seal same.
All those in favor? Carried. All right. Were we ready for questions? Okay. All right. Unfinished business? I don't think there is any. And under other business, we've got, yeah, is there any unfinished business that people want to bring up? Any other business before we go into camera? Nope. Any questions from the press? Roger, we don't hear from you very often.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding the King Street Parkette, has there been a survey made to determine how many children are in that area that would be serviced by that park?
I don't believe so. Not recently under this council.
Is it possible to tell me how much it costs the township to maintain that parkette every year?
That will be part of the staff report that comes back. But at the moment, from Bob Ferguson's report, there are some items that are in need at the moment.
Wouldn't the maintenance costs have been covered when you were doing the budget discussions?
Yeah, they would have been included in the budget, but there's some tree work, there's a number of different items that need to be looked at.
Okay, could you give me, we talked about the King Street Parkette, we're talking about the arena ballpark. We're talking about as disposable sites and Harriman Fields. What was the fourth one?
Okay, so the arena was sold.
Yeah.
So it is King Street. There's 2 lots on Joseph that were recommended in the Parks Master Plan.
2 sites, sire?
On Joseph Street. Do we have a copy of the Parks Master Plan that we could, it's on the website, we could, if you reach out to Deb or I, we can show you that. Okay. The map portion.
Okay. A couple of other questions, if I may, Mr. Mayor, through you to Debbie, on Councillor Snook's report. Is there a minimum number of council meetings that a councillor must attend each year? No?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
On the bylaws,
Yes.
there's a bylaw there regarding, the contract with our with the township's unionized, employees.
Mhm.
And the bylaw says, okay, the contract's fine. But to the best of my knowledge, and I could be wrong, to the best of my knowledge, there's been no discussion about this contract or the contract negotiations within council unless it was done in camera. Was it done in camera?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Are the residents, gonna find out, any details of this contract?
it will become public when we get it. So it hasn't, our piece has been ratified, but from the workers, have they ratified that agreement?
It's actually sitting with the union at this point,
Okay.
just to basically put it together, and then once it gets in here, then it'll get signed.
Okay, so we had an in-camera discussion at our last meeting, which then which brought it here to a bylaw, but it hasn't been finalized with the union yet.
But you've passed a bylaw accepting the contract even though it hasn't been finalized yet?
The contract's finalized, everything's been signed off, but we're just waiting for the full document, that's all. It's basically every single piece of the negotiation has been signed off, both by the union and by management along with the council reps. We're just waiting for the finalized document, which is going to be, basically it's a summary of everything, but all the pages have been signed. Everything that council has agreed to and everything that the unionized workers have agreed to have been signed off. It's just right now it's a bunch of multiple pages, and what happens is they pull it all together back into a contract. That's what we're waiting for. We were supposed to have it, but we haven't received it. But this basically allows council to enter into the bylaw when that agreement comes, but it's all signed off.
And when are residents likely to find out the details of this contract?
As soon as we have the finalized documentation from the union.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
On the resolution about this 30-kilometer speed pilot project?
Yeah.
There's a lot of mays and requests. When does the speed limit change?
When this is all about lobbying the province to ask their permission to allow the base speed limit to be 30 instead of 50.
Okay, that's what I thought. So
yeah.
there's nothing to say that the speeds are going down. It's just that you're lobbying. That's what I read. I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at the moment, just to be completely clear, if we wanted to change a speed limit below 50 kilometer an hour for a residential street, we would have to put many signs on many roads. This will allow the base speed limit in residential areas to be 30.
In the future?
If the province allows it, yes.
Down the road?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And just checking, when you say pilot project, like, would the idea be that Uxbridge would be part of the pilot, or you're just hoping that they would go?
So we want to accomplish this.
Mm-hmm.
If it means that this is an Uxbridge-only pilot, we're happy with that.
Okay.
If they allow municipalities to opt into a program like this across the province, we're also happy. We're mostly concerned with our own residents and their safety.
Okay. And then just on the parquet, where
Mhm.
exactly is that located? Did you say between Beach and Balsam? Is that right?
Pam, you live there?
King
what?
Street?
It's
Okay. Thank
yeah,
you.
on King Street.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. right, any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Thanks, Anna. I think it's only when we ask him a question that we have to pay. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone.
Let's go then. Make good use of your time.
I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Good job, Mayor. Do you guys want to sit up there? So you're looking the same way? You good? Yeah, I'm at double time and a half for this. So it's after 2. No, it's not in the budget. What's that, Dave?
Go ahead,
Okay.
Councillor Garrett.
Okay, thank you. The goal of today is to have some discussion about, I'm going to put it in context of a project. We can weave in real-life projects if you want. I get that time's at a premium, so I don't expect to take that long, but I don't want to rush through it for the sake of rushing through it. So we'll just have as much discussion as it takes, but I don't think I'm going to need that long. I was just saying to Councillor Pop that if you've got other perspectives on words that I use, specifically scope and contingencies and so on, that's okay. I'm not here to dictate. My goal would be that we're all on the same page of what those words mean, right? So that's the goal of this. It's not for me to come in and say, you're doing it wrong and this is the best way to do it. These slides, by the way, I don't think it's any secret that I teach project management for a living, and some is material that's given to me by training organizations, and then I create some of my own stuff. So these were just slides out of an existing. So if they feel a little bit disjointed, that's because there's about 100 missing. So it's just to try to facilitate the discussion. So I'm going to just start off by some basic terminology when we're talking about a project. So a project by definition is temporary. A lot of people seem to think that temporary means, well, it's not going to take very long. It's not the case at all. You know, we've got some in town right now that will take a couple or 3 years to get finished and whatever it is. And then there are other projects, if I can even use some of the things we talked about today in council. If we decided we were going to do something with that King Street property and keep it, then you could say, okay, well, in order to keep it, we need to do this amount of work. But then when that's done, it's done. So it has a beginning and it creates something new. So there's, even though it can be similar to something we've done before, we've built parks before. We've put playground equipment somewhere before, but putting a playground on a new piece of land like what it is on South Balsam would be one situation, but putting a very similar playground on an existing piece of land that something's getting taken out of it be similar, but it's different. So by definition, it's something different. It's not, well, I'm going to use the word operations here in a second. It's not getting up in the morning and plowing the roads again, because we know to do that on an ongoing basis. And then the third point to do with the project is it does consume township resources. I meant to be vague there. That's money, obviously, but it also means it's taking people's time from what they're doing on one job and what they have to do on another. So again, we used that this morning when we were talking about King Street. So then to contrast that to operations. So operations, we've used the term in here before, but it's the ongoingness, if that was a word. So that the ongoing, you think of everything that's happening in public works. For the most part, the day-to-day operations is the maintenance of parks, the maintenance of the pool to keep it going day after day is an operations. If, and I'm just going to kind of point towards Amanda, if there was something in the pool that said, yeah, but we have to replace, I don't know anything about large-scale pools, but we have to replace this piece, well, then that's not operations. She would be funded for that, and have a piece of work to do, and when it's done, and then the ongoing running of that new piece of equipment would be an operations budget. It's important to differentiate the two, and especially in that last line, for everything that we're doing, and I'm going to continue to use real-world examples. The one that we had last week, I think it was, about bringing in the building from Goodwood and moving it over to the museum lands. Great example of a project. Right? There'd be a lot of planning that goes into it. We would move it, we would plunk it down, and we say, there, we're done. Amanda was really quick to point out that we've got 10 of those up there already, and all of them need maintenance, and then, great, thanks for the new building, I now need to budget to maintain an 11th building. I think pretty much what you said. So we need to understand those costs before we get into the project. So we need to make sure that we know that it's not just a one-time multi-million-dollar investment or a smaller one, it's done, it's over with now. It needs to be clear, though, that that budget is separate from the project budget. We put money in, we say, okay, that's going to cost this many dollars to bring the building over, but then we'd have to recognize that as the result of our efforts, there's ongoing budget requirements, but just not to be able to, and I think of the number of situations we have where we get other people's money bringing us gifts, and I know there's a few of us that feel those gifts are costing us a fortune. So we get it done, and we're so excited to have this new opportunity in the township, and then we find that just the running of it, you could think of anything that takes water to run it or anything else that we have to run, and then eventually everything needs repairs. So whether it's repair because it's just an aging asset, or whether it gets damaged by some hoodlum that decides he wants to break it. Jump in here anyway. This isn't a save your questions to the end. Please just interrupt me. The reason I put this in was to show what a typical project life cycle is. So not my goal to turn you into project managers, but the idea is that there's these phases we go through. We, as members of council, are very much involved in up here in initiating. Project managers usually aren't. So it's our responsibility to say, okay, we've got all of these things we'd like to do in 2019, 2020, but we can't do them all. So don't be too worried about the size of it, because usually I'm talking to would-be project managers, and I actually say it's disrespectful to the people who are doing this, because as we all know in the room, it's hard work trying to decide what's going to go forward and what's not. But when something's decided to go forward from a project perspective, it's saying we're going to do whatever it is. We think we're going to move that building. Horrible it's being recorded because we're not really thinking about that right now. But we're going to move that building from there to here, and we think that would be it. We were throwing some numbers around council, and I was looking up at Dave and Inger, well, I have no idea, what does it cost? And they said, I don't know, $250,000, $300,000, I think, is some of the numbers being kicked around. And we say, okay, and it would take us probably a year to figure out how to get that done, but it's very preliminary in its understanding. Then we take the time then to send that issue, that particular project, to a planning stage. Now we'll go back and say, and I'm just going to focus on dollars for sake of time, how much does it really cost to move the building or to do whatever we're going to do? Once we've done that, we'll send it away to somebody. It's going to be somebody on staff, and say, okay, what's involved in that? And they go and they identify all the work. I'll show you that in just a minute. But it's at this point, at the end of the blue line, this is a really important piece, at the end of the blue line is when we decide we're going to do it. So now we go back and Dave says, oh my gosh, I thought it was going to be $250,000. And we say, well, we thought so to start with, but some staff went off and did an investigation, and it's going to be $400,000 to do this project. Dave's jaw drops and says, we can't do that. We just can't. And meanwhile, we could have gone through a budget cycle, and we've already gone to Donna, and Donna says, okay, you think you're going to do this. I better earmark $250,000 for this project. So she might have it, she might know where the money's going to come from, but then we finish the detailed investigation, we get to hear and say, oh my gosh, there's no way we can do that. So we as council, I'm just using Dave as the example, decide we're not moving the building. We're not buying that piece of equipment. We're not doing whatever that initiative was. The only money that's been spent, I'll say, is internal dollars, the effort, and I'm not minimizing it all. There's a lot of effort by staff to figure that out, but we haven't made any commitment to spend taxpayers' dollars at that point. Only here do we say, okay, let's go. Then we do it. Some projects take a long time to do, dealing with them right now. Some are done very quickly. So it goes as high as it goes for as long as it takes, and then you're done. And then we close the project off. That's a discussion for another day to make sure that vendors have been paid and any accounting has to be done. So there's work to be done here. And then we hand it off. So the person running the project said, okay, we're done. We're going to hand that off to somebody. Now, we're a very small municipality. Often Bob does a project and he says, great, it's done. And then he takes it out of his left hand and puts it in his right hand and says, okay, now I've got to look after it forever after on that. And then he would have to, because if you remember on this slide, we've already thought about what it's going to cost. It's already in the budget, and away we go and we look after forever after. Just jump in if you have questions. Every project, when I do these classes on my own or professionally, I tell people there's every project, I don't care whether you're doing a multi-tens of $1 million project here in the township or whether you're building a deck in the back of your house, you have 3 elements to be concerned with. So I'm going to talk about the scope in a minute, but we need to know the scope first. I've asked this question 100 times in classes to say, if I go back to this one, I'll say, which do we do first? Which would you need to know first? 80% of the time people say, well, you need to know what the scope is, the work to be done. 20% of the time people say, you need to know how much money you've got. But I'll say to them, well, picture this. I'm in this process right now. I need a new deck in my backyard. If somebody comes in and says, how much money do you want to spend? They'll then define what the work's going to be. You'll get this for that much money. And I don't blame them for wanting to do that, but to be able to say, okay, this is what you can get for that much. What we want to be able to do is say, no, this is the work. We know what we want, and now it's going, what is that going to cost? So that's going to include any of those project costs to get it done. I'm not going to spend much time on time, but to say, when I know this, there's a process to find that out. That's not actually very difficult. It's just money. And then there's a process over here to figure out how long it's going to take. Then the discussion turns into, well, I need it sooner. So we go through something at the pool. We need to replace some part that only Amanda in the room knows about. Says, okay, we have to do this. It's not a maintenance issue, but she knows it's got to be done. But she knows, I'll say the clock is ticking. It has to get done. So she says, I need it sooner than that for whatever the situation is. So there's only 2 things we can do. I'm not going to go into the typical classroom here and make you answer. The only 2 things you can do is reduce what she's going to get, so cut this back, or spend more money. Have the contractor say, well, we can get that done for you, but I'm going to have to work weekends, and that doesn't come for free, so you can pull this back. The other, just quickly on the idea of a constraint, it's very clear that if you change any of those, when you're in here, if someone says, this is going really well. So Dave says, I love this project. While we're doing it, why don't we, and he puts some more scope into it. He decides he wants to change it. He's got that authority to say, he can influence council to say, yes, let's expand what we're doing. Great. What's it going to do here? Those are locked. Once those 3 are there, they're locked down. And it's only through a change request can you change it. So if somebody decides we want more, it costs you more. If we get into a situation where we're running out of money because of other projects that have overrun, Donna comes in and says, we can no longer afford X millions of dollars, and she tells us that the money's cut, then the change is something's going to go here. Maybe we push it out, because we've done that, although it tends to cost more money later, or we scale back what we're doing. We use the term stakeholder quite a bit in council, and I'd like us to have a definition of what that is. And my definition of it is there. So it's any individual or any group or any organization, and these words make it really broad. May affect the project, be affected by the project, even think it's affected by it, or anything to do with the project at all. They love it, they hate it, they think it's the worst idea ever, and you got a bunch of people rallying around it to say they love it. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was new software, we can start sending out information to our stakeholders,
okay,
so they're aware of the projects we're doing.
More that's going in, sure.
So
yeah.
when things come through this office, they can start getting copied on things.
Perfect, yeah. So if we can do that, we end up, there are people that we're trying to satisfy with our project. I purposely stay away from the word happy. It's not really our job to make people happy. Our job is to satisfy a particular need. Now, in our positions, the challenge with that is there are often dozens and dozens of stakeholders, and they all think they're equally important. And the cold reality is they're not. It's not a human rights situation. It's certain people need to be satisfied with the outcome of the project, and some, we would like to hear your input, but there are other people that have to be satisfied with this. If I think of a project that's come from the region tells us we have to do something. Not sure what that example would be, you can help me here, but we have to do something. Ultimately, we have to satisfy that higher level of government. Did we have some angry constituents as a result of it? Yes, but in this situation, we had to satisfy a regulatory issue that came from the region or from the province. Actually, I'm going to go back one there. I'm just thinking now if you had a situation where who controls accessibility? What level of government dictates that? In the feds? So if the feds came in and said, you have to do this by a certain time on your facilities, I'm going to use the pool as an example, or the senior center. If they say this has to happen, it has to happen. And did it upset some of the people who are regular users of the pool? Probably so. It's not what we're here to be judged by. Did cookies just arrive? Oh, I've learned 12 years ago never to talk during food distribution. Oh. Can I pause? I'll press the pause button in the recording. Okay, so what is scope? Scope by definition then is the work. The work that has to be done, the bottom of that triangle that I drew, all the work that's going to lead to that product being done, that service now being available to the public, the result of whatever it is we're trying to drive. That work, it's really important to understand, it's not just the work, remember, it's not operations, it's the project. It's not just the work being done by the vendor. If we have to have one of our members of staff, or if a member of council has to be there to supervise or to regulate or to communicate with the public, that's work. If there's administrative work that's happening back in the office that has to be done, that's work. So everything that needs to be done that's going to cost us money one way or the other is part of the definition of scope. Now, there's a lot up here, but I'm going to just talk and I'm going to get you to help me. So a business objective from the township, if you think about our goal in this particular example, I'm going to use the pump park as an example, is to facilitate people to be as active as they choose to be somewhere in that area. One township objective is to facilitate people to be healthy and active as they want to be, as long as other ones, but that's the one that we're talking about. So then we name a project, and we'll call it Project Pump Park, don't care. And then there's deliverables. Deliverables are things that don't exist today that will when we're done. Make sense? So right now, out at the fields of Uxbridge, there's nothing. So now I am going to ask some questions. Give me an example of a deliverable. So way bigger. I mean, the whole thing is the pump park, but what's something that has to go in to make it a pump park? No. What? Something. Picture this. I'm sorry to say no so quickly, David. Picture at the field. Right now, it's grass. Okay. So so there's going to be some site. There's some that's coming. So I'm thinking I don't know.
Sponsor
about
signage.
Pump parks. Okay. I'm going to see something. Use a different example. Benches. Thanks. Think nouns. Honestly, think nouns. So there will be benches out there. Maybe, Todd, maybe you're right. Maybe the whole thing is I don't know anything about pump parks. So there we go. Okay. So we've got the track itself. There's benches. There's, what did you just say? Parking. And signage. So there's 4 things that don't exist today. There's nothing there today, but when we're done, they'll be there. You come down a level, there may be, think of these as big nouns, think of these as little associated nouns. So perhaps around signage, there's entrance signage, sponsorship signage, and wayfinding signage. All part of signage, which all leads up to satisfying this business objective, so people know where to go to do healthy, active activities. Nouns, nouns, nouns so far. Nouns aren't work. Work is scope. We have to find out what the work is that would lead to that noun being produced. So what leads to sponsorship signage being installed? Finding sponsors. Find sponsors, so the words will say, find sponsors to support paying for the sign. Order the signs, perfect. Install the signs. Work, 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 right? I don't want to flip back and forth, it'll just give you a headache, but that's the scope of the project. Now here's another way to put it. You could imagine, even for something like a pump park, there could be hundreds of pieces of work, hundreds of them. Most of us aren't going to be involved in it, some of them will be. So we've got all of that work up here. Here's the way this works though. Pardon the tone of this next sentence. If it ain't there, it ain't happening. If it's not identified as work that's part of the project, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to flip. If it's not identified in the project, it doesn't get budgeted. And you'll see a slide in a minute. I'm not going to show you how to schedule, but I'll just put a slide up. It won't get scheduled to get done. It won't have money. It won't get done. So, unprofessionally, if it ain't there, it ain't going to happen. So then you say, well, wait a minute, we missed something. That's okay. We're not perfect. We can realize now that there's something else that we totally forgot about. Okay, sorry, back to this. Dave says, it makes sense, put it in the scope. All right then, let's put it in the scope. What is the effect on the budget? I can't flip back and forth, but if you go back to that project life cycle, when we got to the end of the blue line, the end of the planning, that's it. That's what we're doing in this much time for this much money. I'm not going to walk too far through this. All I'm saying is those are the things I call work packages, the pieces of scope. It just shows that this can't be done until this is done, but when this is done, both this and this can start. So just think of them in a regular class. I would have you do an exercise. I would give you post-it notes, and you would figure out how to sequence them. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. This is more of the meat of what I'm here to talk about. My sense is we need to do a better job on dealing with risks. Risk has a definition. There'll be some that you're familiar with, some I think would catch you off guard. So I'm going to break this down in little pieces. It's an uncertain event or condition. I'm going to stop right there. We don't know if this will happen or not. If we know it happens, if we know there's going to be something, and we have to do something about it, that's scope. That's work that has to be done. This is stuff that might or might not happen. And if it does, I'll stick with the underlying one first, it'll have a negative effect on one of my project objectives. My objective is to have a pump park open by whatever date we're aiming at to get it done. So, right, it'll affect the timing, it'll affect the schedule. It could affect the quality of what we're doing. It could have a health and safety issue. Now, just to round it out, and again, we won't do it on this course, but we could also go looking for, if we did this, so we're working on the project, we committed to a plan, and then we decided that, wow, wait a minute, if we did this, we could actually save money on the project, not down the road. Frankly, as a project manager, I don't really care about operations costs. I do as a member of council, but I don't as a project manager. My job is to get it over to the operations people. I'm looking for an opportunity to save money on the project. Got more money, Donna goes home happy. Happy Donna, happy day. So we've got more money there, or you can actually use that money for something else. If you can save money on a project, you can use that for additional scope. Kind of rather you didn't, but I'll say you could. So the important part there is it's something we've identified, but we don't know if it will happen. So doing risk management is not complicated. People will sell it. I would bet there's been at some time in Ingrid's career, there's probably been somebody come in here and try to sell risk management to the organization and made it sound way more complicated than it is, and it's not.
So the first thing would be, what's most important? So is it getting the work done? So you imagine we set the budget, and we go back and we talk to Dave and say, what's the most important part on this project? He says, we've got to get this done on time. So Dave, there might be a point where in order to get this one done on time, to meet some event that's coming up with Peter Bethlenfalvy or another level of government, John Henry's coming in, he might say, you have to get this done. I'd say to him, if something comes up that's going to slow me down, I might have to spend a bit of money. Just spend the money, not a lot of money, but if you've got to get something done to meet that date, I'm really reinforcing with the key stakeholder what's most important to you. Think of one that could be up there. It's not part of the triple constraint, but another priority, safety, right? If there's anything that could get one of our employees hurt, or even a contractor get hurt on a job, then we'd have to do something about that. So step one, if I go back, what's the most important things on the project? Step two, identify the risks. Here's what I'd like you to do. In little groups of 3 or 2, just take a second and think about how would we come up with what could go wrong on the project. Don't think about the pump park. Don't tell me what could go wrong. How would we come up with it? And here's a couple of examples. The last time we did a project at the Fields of Uxbridge, think of what's out there now, what went wrong? Because once it's gone wrong before, at least now you know about it. Last time we did an upgrade to the pool, what went wrong? Right? So you're thinking about the last time you did a similar project. Or you meet with somebody who's got knowledge in that. You're just talking about some of the things we could find out there. So before Ingrid leaves, we sit down with her and say, listen, before we do this, what do you think could go wrong? So we're talking to experts. We bring in a contractor, and the contractor says, have you thought about this, this, and this? Because we've done pump parks in 5 other municipalities. So just take a couple minutes by yourself and say, how else will you come up with what could go wrong on a project? Yeah, just do it in your group of 3 or something. Yeah, but number 2. What time did I start? Quarter after? 20 after? Yeah, make sure we get done now. Okay, what'd you come up with? Mr. Pop.
Like I was saying, check with other municipalities, go upstream, see what the region's done in similar projects.
Fair enough. So like it's still a level of subject matter expertise, but they don't have to be the obvious ones. You can go to other places. What do you guys have, Dave?
So thinking below the surface. So if you're thinking like a pump park, when we take the sod off, what's going to be there? Will it be an old pool foundation? Will we find the bones of the Bartons? Will there be a purged water table?
Okay, so the actual technique then is that you're thinking about the events. I want you to get there. You're right, that's what's coming up next. But the technique itself is you could just brainstorm. What could possibly go wrong when you go to a facility that used to have whatever was running around there in its day? What could fix? All right, what else? Todd, what'd you have?
First, was that a confession? Well, those were two that we had. What else?
What was the site formerly used for? That might kind of give you an indication of some of the issues you might run into.
Kind of putting words a little bit in your mouth, but be able to say, get any documentation that you've got and pour through it. An example of that would be the contract that the vendor has brought to you to do the work is often full of risks that we don't know until we go, oh shoot, where did that come from? So taking the time to pour through documentation to go, well, what if this happens or what if that happens? What do you guys have? Okay. Okay, so I'm trying to think of what the technique would be. Yeah. We're kind of blending a couple in brainstorming the subject matter experts. Did anybody else have other ones?
I think we could use the pump park as an example, and Rotary thinking they're the lead.
Okay, I'm just looking, go ahead, Roger.
Would you use like case studies from other, not only levels of government, but other levels of business?
Yeah, so look at, okay.
Say they did this project, this is what they ran into, so let's avoid by duplicating those mistakes.
So again, there's some past projects, but even the one I was just talking to you about, you could have industry standards. So companies that have done this before, there are always certain risks. Like every time you dig something up, there are risks that none of us know about, maybe more so staff. Most of us on council don't know because that's not what we do. But those people there are certain risks with doing certain types of work. They just know what they are. So my point being is that it's not just, well, I don't know, what do you think? Well, I think this could go wrong, and leave it to a couple of people who are trying to run projects that it's their fault because they didn't come up with the risks. Well, none of us are capable of coming up with them all, and you would tend to default to the same technique as you've done before. But there are lots of different techniques. The goal of identifying risks, more is better. Pound them in, and you think, oh my gosh, it gets so negative. Doesn't matter. So you come up with 50 things that could go wrong as soon as we start doing the pump park project. Better to know now than to have 50 surprises happen once we get into the project. No, what do we do though? So we've got 50 of them. We need to figure out what's more important. What's more important is, go back to step one, what's the most important thing on the project? Health and safety, goes right to the top. Someone says it's not likely to happen. There's like a 1% chance that somebody could be electrocuted working on the site. That's big enough. Welcome to Canada. It matters. So we care about those type of events. So it goes right to the top. Very low probability, horrible result. So that goes to the top. It turns out that if I go back to that triple constraint one, and there's one that Dave really wants to get done because of some kind of an event with the province, and he has to get that date met, and someone says, well, there's a chance we could be a couple days late on something. That's a big deal if you've got 3 other levels of government coming in and Dave's got to make a big announcement with them there. So even a 2-day delay could be a big deal. So we want to be able to prioritize them, so it's based on probability and impact. I think you've kind of got my gist from when I sit over there. I'm not a big fan of qualitative analysis. I don't like adjectives in business because my definition of high, low, medium, significant can be really different than yours. So if I say there's a small delay, we're thinking a couple of days, Dave's losing his mind because a small delay to him on a project that other levels of government are going to meet him and give us more money is a huge deal. So adjectives are quick and dirty, they're not very effective. But there's nobody in the room who doesn't know what a 90% chance of a $20,000 delay is. Nobody in the room. When you quantify it, you know exactly what it is. This is easy. We sit around and we say, oh, I don't know, what do you think? Oh, I think it's really likely. Well, really, really likely? Well, okay, that. And then we say, but it's a small delay. And Dave says, well, I think it's a bigger delay than that, so we make it a big delay. That's easy. This takes time. This means we've got to give time. Remember that planning phase. This is when we're doing it. We're not in executing. We're in that planning phase. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. Sometimes you just need to slow down, think through it carefully, do it right the first time, not just let it get away from you. So we go through and we identify them. We got 50 things that could go wrong at the pump park. We go through and we do the best that we can to analyze what the impact will be. And then we do something about them. Excuse me. Ideally, we make them go away. So I'm only talking about the negative risks. I'm not going to talk about the positive ones here. Excuse me. So ideally, we avoid it. It means take something that has a very low probability and make it zero, or something with a very high probability and make it zero. It's tough. It's almost impossible to make a risk go away. I'm going to use the sad example then of 1% chance of somebody being electrocuted on a site. It's impossible to stop that from happening. You can say, well, we could do make sure the power is off. Stuff happens sometimes. The only way to make it go away is don't do the work. You can't take risk out of your life. You can transfer it. You can make it somebody else's responsibility. The easiest example is my car is parked out back, I think. Right? So it should be there, but if it's not, it's insured, and I'm going to move the dollar impact of that risk to somebody else. The issue, though, with us, if we do that and we insure it and we push it to somebody else, think about, must talk about one with the snow clearing is a good example of it. If we say, well, we're going to move that risk to our insurer and push it over there, sure, it might cover the financial impact, but it does not cover the brand impact. It's still our responsibility. We could contract out that work and pay someone to clear all of our sidewalks. If somebody trips and falls, they're not going after the contractor. We haven't moved the responsibility at all. It comes back to us. You say, well, you'll cover that off by making them liable and having coverage with them. If they're still there, if they don't close up shop because they've just been sued. Transferring, if somebody steals my car, I don't know what the book value is on that car. It's probably not much. It's $5,000. Great, I get a check real quick for $5,000. Hasn't fixed my problem. I don't have a car. Or sometimes you do nothing. Sorry, I should talk mitigate. Mitigate now means, okay, I can't make it go away, but what can I do to make it less likely to happen? What can I do to, if it does happen, we not have a $10,000 overrun, we manage it so it could only be a $5,000 overrun. So we start to address how we reduce the probability and impact, and sometimes you do nothing. Sometimes it's just, it's not that big a deal, we'll deal with it when it comes. So this is, to me, the most important part of this presentation. What is a contingency reserve? So what do we do if we've tried to make the risk go away, but it happened? So a reserve then is an allocation. I'm just going to talk about money. We're not going to talk about time. Let's just keep it near and dear to our heart. So it's to deal with those identified risks that despite our efforts to try to stop them from happening, they happened. So we tried to stop it, but we didn't budget for it happening because we didn't know if it would happen or not. If you budgeted for it to happen, it must have been scoped, so you would have put it in the budget. Right? Because remember, the definition of a risk is it's uncertain. We don't know if it'll happen or not. So here's the one I wanted to use. I made these up when I was making up the presentation. If artifacts, in fact, are found in the ground, there would be a cost impact. That's the risk statement. So what would it be? I'm going to slide over here. Is it okay that my back's to the camera? Does it make any difference? It's actually my better view. Further away from the camera, the better. So what would be the likelihood, because we've done other projects out there, what's the probability of finding artifacts out there? Sorry, you can't. So I'm going to put it here. So the event's over here, so it's 10%. If we found artifacts, how much would it cost as a result of finding them? 50? Good enough, thanks. Okay, leave that one alone for a minute. If there are large objects buried, so we start digging away, this isn't, not as far as artifacts, but we find a bulldozer under there that someone buried back in the beach era. So something got buried into there. What's the chances of finding some surprises once we start digging into the, not artifacts, stuff, big stuff? What's that, 50? Yeah, so Bob's done a lot of projects. So here's our subject matter expert, and instead of saying medium, I could ask him a couple of questions and go, really? So how many projects have you done in town, Bob? And he goes, like 100. How often have you found something in the ground? A lot. So it's still adjectives. Well, what do you mean? He said, well, half the time. So there's a guy who knows what he's talking about, and he says 50%. There's going to be a cost to get that bulldozer and whatever else he finds buried under there out of there. Just make up a number. How much would it cost additional that we didn't budget for? Yeah, I bet. Okay, so whatever it is, and I know you're going to say, well, it depends on what it is and so on, but just for a number, thanks. Fourth one, we put the lighting up. As we're putting the lighting up and we're testing it out, some neighbors get a little bit upset and they demand that that lighting be changed. Can't have those bright lights that we've got in front of my house now. Never had a complaint from it, but the odd time it happens. So what are the chances of a neighbor complaining? I'll just say 20%. Now we have to change the lights, not just dim them down, which the new ones we can do, but we find we have to change them. So, good enough, $20,000. I'm just making stuff up for the sake of time. Well, one more. What if, while we're doing the project, the contract wasn't perfect, and as costs went up, we found that they could actually move those costs. So it wasn't a firm fixed price contract, there was some element of flexibility on it, so the costs go up. How often do costs go up on our projects? 80%, and I'm going to just make up a number again. So I'm just going to say it could go up by $10,000. So, but here's the point. By definition, a risk is an uncertain event. We don't know whether we're going to find artifacts in the ground. We don't know, despite our work, whether we're going to find a bulldozer in the ground. Now you could say, you could mitigate, I'm going to talk a little bit like a project manager here, I could mitigate that 50% down by spending more money and do one of those scans of the earth to see what's in there, and probably drop it to 20%, because then if Bob sees there's something really large in there and metal and it's not bones, it seems like a machine, well then he's going to have to budget into his plan to cover that off. But here's the deal. We've said, and picture this, now we're going to go to Donna and say, Donna, we came up with 50 things that could go wrong. Says 4. If they happen, I would need another $130,000. Donna, can I have $130,000? She looks at me and goes, for things that might or might not happen. Yeah. She goes, no. Because really, the probability of this happening, you can start to do some, if you're any good at statistics, this and this happening, and this happening, and it's not quite perfect, but you can start multiplying those probabilities, and there's probably like a 3% chance of all of those events happening. So Donna's saying, I'm not giving you another $130,000 to deal with something that might or might not happen. Bob's over here saying, yeah, but I've been doing this a long time, and I'm pretty sure something will happen. Herein comes a contingency reserve. So contingency reserve is for things that might or might not happen. So Bob says, listen, I'm not signing off on a $5 million, I'm just making numbers up, a $5 million contract when I've got 50 things that could cost me more money. Because we've told Bob, if it goes over budget, you're fired. He says, I'm not signing off on that. And so he says, I want all of this money. And Donna says, I'm not giving you that either. So we do this. It's simple multiplication. So I'm going to do 5, so 10% of that, 50% of that, 20% of that, 80% of that. So it's 30, catch me if I fall, 42? That's a 2. So we're going to put $42,000 into the budget. Donna's going to give us, she's going to accept that $42,000 is going into the budget to deal with stuff happening. It's there not for, oh, you know what, we've got some money, let's now put in extra benches, because Willie wanted a bench out there. So why don't we put in some more benches? No, this is for risks that we've identified. Then we say, that, so you know, it doesn't work out because my numbers aren't good, but if this risk happens, then I've got some money. I know the numbers aren't going to work out because I didn't have 50 on here. But I've got money to deal with the things, and Bob's budget is now protected. Somebody was talking just before we got started here saying, well, as the project progresses, do you start giving that money back? Can Donna say, well, okay, you're 80% through, you're not going to use up all the contingency, I want that money back to use for another project. I go to Donna as the project manager and say no, because This one might still happen, and we've spent some of it, but I don't know until the project's done. The best part is, if something doesn't happen, if we don't use that, we give it back. We don't spend it. We don't have to be like other levels of government that say, the money's in the budget, you have to spend it. Forget it. We just give it back. We leave it, and we never took it in the first place. We're not even giving it back. We roll it back in, and we've got money to put towards other projects. Sometimes even weirder stuff happens. If I could turn you all into risk managers and you start really thinking about what could go wrong and you analyze it and you start to say, okay, I'm going to set some money aside, sometimes what we have to do is allocate money for risks that weren't identified. But so we said this money, think of it as a separate, literally, she's got it earmarked, she's put on a $2 million project, she's actually set an extra $100,000 aside to deal with, oh my gosh, we struck water. We never even thought of it. Right? Just something, there's no way of knowing. Despite all of your ways of making as many risks as you can, some bad stuff happens. But she's got that money sitting there, and therefore we're not going over budget. It's earmarked for it. Or, it doesn't even have to have that money, because Donna's going to say, well, I can't do that because you can't put that into the budget. Okay. Then really what we're saying is pull it out of another project. We're fortunate that as a municipality we can't run deficits, but we'd be able to say, okay, we now know that this is going to cost us more, that we want it, we hit some stuff that we didn't see happening. Great. So then that means we as council have to make a decision. We don't want to leave the park half finished. We'll finish the park, but that extra reserve to deal with the overruns means that the ABC project doesn't get done. We take it from somewhere else, which I think is really the way we get it done anyway. So there's two reserves. There's a contingency reserve. It's built in. It's for known risks, not extra work. Management reserve is money that's being held until the project's completed to make sure that we never have a cost overrun. So, my last slide. Projects by definition end. There's a beginning, there's a plan, we execute it, we close it. Without knowing the scope, you can't do the rest of the triangle. You can't define a budget, you can't define the time if you don't know how much the work is. Not doing risk management then leads often to cost overruns, reserves being set aside, whether it's a contingency reserve or whether it's a management reserve. So my last question is really then, so what do we do different? How do we do it differently so we don't have that, oh dear, and really what I want to make sure is that, just look at Bob, because Bob is what triggered me. He didn't even know it, but it was his reference to contingency that brought me to doing this. And I'd like us to use the same terms, but again, I'm not here to dictate. If you want to call it something else, that's great, but it's an important term to make sure it's for, in my mind, that it's for things that we know could happen. It's not there to say, hey, let's do extra work with it. Go ahead, Dave.
So, I think one of the things that we should be doing moving forward, first of all, this was really helpful, Bruce. I believe in our reports, we should start adding possible risks. They do it for some of our regional reports, and we don't want the 50 items, but we might want to have the top 3. And it could be, say it's the pump park, could be possible risks, could be the archaeological report, it could be fuel surcharges from contractors, or you pick your top 3 risks in terms of cost, and I think we should add that, just so we as council, when we're making decisions, we know that which ones are really risky and which ones are less.
Dave, I'll just add that we add that, but we don't add in, I'll just use some of your examples there. You don't add in the fact that the fuel surcharge could add $500. It may not. We'd have to think of what's the probability. So we don't just automatically put in the full amount. We put in a portion of that amount.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just saying the top 3 most costly risks. And and we want to be careful because everything's public, we don't want to add in, we don't want to let our contractors know that we're thinking about some things, but, so we want to be carefully adding those, but I think it's important for us to see that even as a lens, that every time we do a project, there are risks involved. Do you want to use the mic just in case, Bob? Thanks, buddy.
Just to build on that from an operations side of things, I think it's just as important to show the operating cost that come up. Operating costs never get discussed through projects that come before council. We have a pump park that's coming, we have a tennis court that wants to be coming, we have trails that are added every year. We never, as council, we never talk about the operating cost that gets left behind. And obviously you guys are in a situation where you're trying to make the popular decision, because it's what keeps your jobs. But at the end of the day, there's an operating cost that goes with it, and that's where we struggle as a department. And it's just as easy to show what might come along the lines as far as the contingency, but we know there's going to be that operating cost, yet it's not discussed. So I think that's something, when you can look at the thing and you can say, okay, we're going to build a new tennis court, but just know that we're probably going to have to spend $35,000 to resurface it in 8 years. And all those type of things, so it can be built in, so when we come to budget time, we know that those costs are there and there's no surprises with them.
Thanks, Bob.
Gord.
I'll just make a comment about your definition of scope. I think that's bang on. We do a plan every year called our budget, which tends to drive what we do rather than the other way around, and I know it's always been a challenge to sort of structure it, and it's unfair to staff sometimes when we have a, if I can call it a strategic plan as to where we're headed, at least in this term of council, and then somebody will come in and do a delegation, for instance, and all of a sudden that's the project of the day. And it's kind of handed to staff to, okay, you guys deal with this, right? So they have no contingency, they have no budget for it, they have no real plan to enable it, and then we're always playing catch up, and Bob's bang on. There's no operating numbers even discussed for these things. So as a municipality, maybe we need to do a little bit more focusing on it. If something does come in from left field that we know we're going to have to come up to staff to just excuse me, by doing that, this is what we're incurring, and it kind of brings us back on the rails again, because otherwise you're totally all over the map, and it may not be something that we've even dreamed of doing in the next, let's say, 5 years. So when you have like the FOU master plan, for instance, okay, well if that's not incorporated in this, either A, we got to go back and review the plan and start from scratch or amend it, or we put that project aside until such time as we're able to accommodate it. So, and I found as a councillor that's always been the biggest challenge, is to stay focused. Coming from a business background like yourself, we plan, and if it's not in that plan, it doesn't get done.
Doesn't get done. Or something has to get moved up,
yeah,
something else gets moved down.
Or you amend the plan
Yep.
to bring that in online, rather than be chasing fires every time one goes off, right? So, just a comment.
Good.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, the culvert project is probably the perfect example of it, and it has me a little bit concerned about the new pool at the Fields of Uxbridge. The culvert, if we had followed the schedule, if we hadn't got the grant, we would have still been in the design of the culvert. But we got a grant, which greatly accelerated the need to get it done. All of the engineering wasn't done. There's a lot of work that still wasn't done. So you're just ramping at 200% trying to get everything in its place in order to achieve a funding outcome that the province set. And until last week, it was still March of 2020. And so we have to be, in the future, we have to be more careful. We need to get a lot more of the work done up in advance, and it's going to be hard for council to get their head around, let's say in the case of a new pool, getting your design done sooner than later, making sure you get your property details worked out, so when the time comes that you're ready to go, and if you do get funding, that you're not all of a sudden trying to design a pool in really quick order, because that's where stuff gets missed. You haven't looked at the site, you haven't anticipated the risks, you've been spending all of your energies on what you're going to build and not taking a look at all of the stuff that's outside of that building.
The pool needs this. I mean, whatever is gonna be into this recreation complex, and I don't mean this, like, there's nobody in the room who can define the work that would lead into this recreation complex. But what is in to allow it then to be properly costed, priced, and be able to say, okay, whatever it is, Todd, you know, whatever you want out there, and then say, okay, that's it. And then if I don't want to switch the slides, but the triple constraint is, and that's it, that's all. You budget for that, and then that's it. There's no, we should be able to eliminate the growing cost of a project by clearly defining the scope, to your point, Gord. That's what we're doing, we're not doing more, and you're gonna have to build a budget, and when they're the bigger they are, the harder they are to do. You do tens of $1 million facility, it gets really hard to define some of this stuff. But the other part is, to me, I gotta put that slide back up. The triple constraint is, that's the budget, and if it starts to creep up because it took us longer to get the approvals or anything else, well, the scope's gonna get cut back then. So what are you gonna sacrifice to maintain the dollars? Or go find more money? Okay, Willie.
In the spirit of finding more money too, when we're seeing declining envelopes coming forward year over year, we have to kind of budget differently, making assumptions moving forward. Like, we were fortunate that it stayed flat. We were also with regards to this year, but pretty safe bet it's coming down probably 4 to 8% based upon what we heard for next year. And, you know, as we look at this, we might have to take an approach, you know, kind of what Works does with their snow removal budget, where they've got a little bit of the extra in case we have a tough winter, and we might have to put that into the different departments as kind of a reserve, you know, it's there. So off the top, if we had $100, we'll work with 90% of it, and 10% will be back held for whatever crops up, or if our envelopes, because we're getting our information just in time now, or later. Yeah, so we really need to look at it differently as we move forward to make sure that, because, I mean, if you look at Brock, if Brock didn't get the money, if they didn't get whole money this year with how they moved their taxes for it, they'd have been in a lot of trouble. So I think we need to look at it a little bit differently too.
Anybody else? That's my hour, so I don't want to, yeah, good one. Anybody else? Good? Okay, thanks everybody.
Just on that too, we're going to have, Donna, you're going to do a presentation in June on debt financing. So debentures and what drives those costs up on an annual basis by the debt load that you carry.
These are really, really important pieces. And Bruce, thanks for doing this. I know I can see you squirming occasionally when we're talking in council. And it's good to see how you see things now. I know this is a very small piece of it, but thanks for sharing. Uh-oh, his head's going to get too big. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Todd, Pam, all in favor? Carried. Thanks.